This is my channel's monthly compendium for January 2024. Enjoy. Case file number 1409, written by Handyman92, My Wild Time Loop in Boarding School. I went to a boarding school. One night, I had a dream that I still remember to this day. It started out from waking up in the morning to my alarm, caveman style, dragging myself out of bed, going to breakfast, going to all my classes, having lunch, doing more of my classes, hanging out with my mates to their room to play Mario Kart, and attempting to do work, dinner, tuck shop, homework, crawling into bed, and no soon as I shut my eyes, my alarm goes off and it's morning. At the beginning of the day I had just dreamt. It had all felt so real as well, so I was quite pissed off that I had to redo the entire day again. But as the day went on, the more I noticed what happened in my dream is exactly what was happening now in real life. The conversations, the classes taught, everything was exact. I even managed to creep my mate out a bit when playing Mario Kart when I said something I knew he was going to say due to my dream. To this day, I have never had another dream like this. What made it more weird was that in the dream, time seemed to move at the same pace as when awake, so it really felt like a Groundhog Day event. Case file number 1410, written by John Jones Johnson, the day my name echoed from unseen lips. When I was in university, this one time I was walking from one building to the other with two friends. We're talking and there's a group of other students coming towards us, probably going to the other building. It was one of those things when you see 6 or 8 people and you immediately realize you don't recognize any of them, so you go back to minding your own business. As we, the two groups, are passing each other, I hear someone saying my full name out loud. It definitely wasn't any of my two friends, and as I look at the other group, they're all mid-conversation about whatever, and I see once again that there's no one in the group who could possibly know or recognize me, and no one was even looking at me or anything. I am 100% sure I heard my full name said out loud, but I have no idea who said it. And I have a fairly rare name, so it's not like Adam Smith or Tom Jackson, etc. And it's not like I misheard some random words. Someone said my full name for no reason. Bonus file, written by Ghost Girl 32, My Father's Last Call. My father, the man who raised me, not biological, died in late August when I was 19. The semester had just started, community college at the time. I could hardly focus, but I couldn't sleep. Just days ago he had just been down the hall, there in his hospital bed, but now he wasn't. Mom was in there sleeping alone. My little sister in our shared room, out cold. I don't know why. The day after he died, I had gone to classes. My little sister went with me and sat in the back, ditching her school with permission. It was a reprieve for her for some reason to follow me to my college classes. This would continue well into her high school years. I think that's how she knew that college and university was not for her. Seeing me slog through it for years, longer than most. Anyway, 3 a.m. came, and I just stared at my computer. No one was online. My friends were all either already in bed because they had school soon, or because of all the time difference. I zoned out a little, and just sat there thinking. I didn't really want to go to school the next day. Maybe I would ditch and take my sister out somewhere instead. But that would be too irresponsible. It was still my first week of school. I just sort of turned back and forth a bit in the rolly chair, one of 6 that we had picked out for the dining room less than 2 years ago on a rainy, stupid day after moving to that house. I could still remember the ambulance, the police cars, the hearse. I still remember them. I looked at my computer again and went to scroll something. Then Dad yelled out at me. He said my name and told me to go to bed. So loudly, my dog, his dog, our dog, jumped up and ran over and looked down the hallway to my parents' room. The chair had smacked into the glass table so hard, I thought it may have cracked. It didn't. I closed my computer, loudly said, "Okay," put my notes away, and set about turning off the lights. I went to bed. Sort of. My dog got up on my bed with me, and I set my alarm for the morning. My sister rolled over, and I cried myself to sleep. I don't know how my dad could have spoken to me like that when he was already dead. His body is in a crematorium 15 miles away, The only reason I know he spoke out loud was that before I could react, the dog had. My dad had died after a multi-year battle with lung cancer that had metastasized. This is the last time I heard his voice other than recordings. In memories, it's always distorted, like listening to a radio. I've been hard of hearing since the 3rd grade, and normally if I heard something from my parents' bedroom, I would have to go in there to have them repeated, but this had been crystal clear. Therapists over the years have said that this does not align with anything out of grief that they have experienced. One suggested God, and another said it was paranormal. I cannot explain this experience with any definitive answer, and every August I remember the experience, and I wonder what it really was. Was it my dad? Or did my brain suddenly recall sound, somehow, without distortion, and make it up out of grief? There's no real answer to it, and there never will be. Case file number 1411, written by Weird Aiden, the incredible dragon sighting at school. Once, in year 5, I was out with my class for PE class, and I just looked up at the clouds while the teacher was talking because I didn't care. I knew what to do. It was a cloudy day, and I like clouds, so I just watched them float by when suddenly I saw a wing, like a dragon wing, just a huge white one, just flap, then disappear. I thought I was going insane. I didn't mention it to anyone, but it's vivid in my memory. Another occasion. This happened around 3 times. Year 5 and at school too. I was just chilling with my 2 friends when a huge shadow just covered the whole school for a second. There was no reaction from anyone else apart from me and my friends. We kept it between us for some reason. Once, I was just chilling in my old apartment. I was like 6 or 7, I think. And the windows in that apartment were like 4 or 4.5 feet tall, and a big, and I mean big, white thing just flew past it, covering the whole freaking window. I was a stupid and imaginative kid. Unicorns, dragons, fairies kind, and my dad is pretty spiritual. It can get annoying at times. So I looked at him. He looked at me with a smile, and I waited 3 seconds before I ran to the window to see what the hell it was. What kind of idiot was I? I got a lot of stories. Once I was passing the kitchen door to go to the bathroom, and I just saw a shadowy black fox with small black angel wings for a second. I didn't see any details, but I knew it was a fox. I tried to run to see what it was, but it just disappeared. Another time I was sneaking into the living room at 1 a.m. out of boredom, and I saw a white bulldog. It didn't have any details, just a white silhouette. And yet another time I walked into the living room at night and saw a gray silhouette wolf looking out of the balcony door at the trees before turning its head to me and disappearing. I was 9 the whole time with these 3. Throughout year 5, I kept seeing shadows that didn't make sense, like just black spots around the place. When I was in my classroom and looked out the windows, boom, shadow out on the playground. When I was in the assembly hall, boom, shadow in the tree. When I was outside, boom, shadow hiding around. I never actually got scared though, never once. One time I was in my room before going to sleep and shadows of people holding hands and running just flew across my walls. I didn't really care or feel threatened or scared in any way. I don't understand why though. Most of these stories happened when I was younger, and they're all so weird now I look back. One time I was asleep and had a bunk bed. I slept on the top bunk, and I have no idea how because I had rails. I had fallen off. I was completely fine though because I fell on a big stuffed bear, or so my parents told me. I don't understand though. I had rails and the bear wasn't even there when I went to sleep. As a kid I thought toys had a consciousness. I still kind of do, and I always feel bad for somehow hurting my plushies. Do not ask. So my parents said that he saved me that day. To this day, I have no clue on how I fell off and how I ended up on the bear. I have more stories, but these are the main ones, also the only ones I can remember at the moment. So enjoy my weird experiences. Bonus file written by Lady Luna Ravens. When the other side knocks at your door. So, a little backstory. I used to live in a house that backed a cemetery. It was nice, lots of nature, and was quiet. At this point, I'd been living there for 3 years and nothing weird had ever happened. One night, while I was making dinner, I heard knocking at my back door. I freeze as no one should be in the backyard. I carefully walk towards the door, pausing halfway there. The knocking turns into someone slamming their hand against the door. I pick up my fencing EP and walk towards the door. I pull the curtains back to reveal no one. I open the door and I look around and no one is out there. I look down to see mud on the concrete. I try to brush it off when I hear water running in my bathroom. I hold my sword in front of me and walk towards my bathroom. Again, no one, but the sink is on. I turn it off before searching the whole house and find nothing. I don't think much of it, and I eat my dinner and then watch some TV. Again, I hear knocking, this time at my front door. I open it up and it's my neighbor. He looked mad and demanded to know what kind of joke I was playing. Confused as hell, I ask him what he means. He said his son saw a woman climbing over the shared part of our fence and he assumed it was me. I told him about the knocking and my sink being on, and he tells me if I try anything again, he will call the cops on me. I decided then that I should be done for the night. Around 1 a.m., I hear someone pounding on the back door, and this time a female voice, "Help! My husband is trying to kill me!" I immediately run and throw open the door again to no one. I search around my yard and find nothing. I tried to go back to bed, but I couldn't. That morning, I went to have breakfast in my backyard when I heard someone in the cemetery talking about how he was caught and will be charged. Curious, I walked into the cemetery and saw a fresh grave. I looked at the temporary name card and Googled the name. Turns out, buried behind my yard was a woman who was murdered by her husband. I stand there, staring at the mound of dirt, wondering why she did all that. I went back to my house, and nothing ever happened again. I still think about that night. It's file number 1412, written by Lab Retirement Home. The Cosmic Dance That Stopped Time. Once, while walking in the early morning, I saw an asteroid enter the atmosphere and break apart cinematically. There was no flame or light. It seemed to be going in slow motion. Against the pale early morning sky, it was white and gray, more like a snowball than anything else. For a brief few seconds, I could see the detail of its surface as it essentially fell apart and disappeared. But just before it disappeared, time seemed to pause. The image of this thing, this asteroid, was stuck in the sky for at least 10 seconds. It was really huge, bigger than the full moon. My best guess is that it was very, very far away and breaking up in the upper atmosphere, but that the humidity of the atmosphere at that particular angle and that particular moment magnified it the way the moon is sometimes magnified on the horizon and looks enormous as well. There was no one around. I don't think I'll ever see anything like it again in my whole life. It was beautiful. I can only say that this is the only explanation that I can come up with for what I saw, and I have no way to prove it or disprove it to anyone or myself. I can never know for certain what it was I saw. Case file number 1413, written by Purple Vein 99, The New Year's Eve Time Warp. We were newlyweds. That first year, we got into a lot of fights. That particular day was New York Eve, 2000. We had both worked and had different ideas about where and how to spend New Year's Eve. I was 8 months pregnant and wanted us to spend it with my family. He wanted to spend it with his brothers and friends, drinking. I felt wretched. We got into a huge fight. He left and I cried myself to sleep. Sometime after 11, I woke up and found myself still alone. I still felt awful, and he didn't answer any of my pages. Cell phones were a thing, but we didn't have any yet. I decided to go to my parents alone, but once there, everyone's pitying stares and whispers just made me leave. I was certain that he'd be home by the time I got back, but he wasn't, and I just cried anew. And I fell asleep again. I woke up to the sound of voices and his laughter. He was outside. I heard him clear as day, cutting up with his brother. I looked at the digital clock on the bedside table, close to 4 a.m. I was livid. I heard him come up the stairs, rattle the screen door, unlock the door and come inside. I heard him lock the door, set his keys on the kitchen table, heard him walk down the hall to our bedroom. Felt him sitting on the edge of the bed, pat me on the leg. Then he stood and I thought he was just standing there, staring down at me. That's when I heard the slam of car doors. His and his brother's voices are laughing. I immediately sat up and looked around. There was no one in the room but me. Bonus file written by Anonymous, the silent figure that opened my bedroom door. Years ago, when I was in high school, my mom used to work in Brisbane, about an hour and a half from where we live. Most of the time, she would stay there for a few nights instead of driving back and forth every morning and night. I am an only child, so I had the house to myself. One night, when I was asleep in bed, someone opened my bedroom door. I sat up bleary-eyed and just assumed Mom had come back from Brisbane for the night and was checking in on me. I rolled over and went back to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, my door was still open and Mom wasn't home. So I thought that she had already left for work again. Usually there would be a note left by her and a few dishes left behind, but there wasn't. I called her and asked her if she'd come back last night. She hadn't. Okay, so maybe the wind had blown open my door during the night and I was just dreaming when I thought I saw someone in my doorway? There was an open window in the hallway opposite my door, so I checked it out. The issue was that my door was a sliding door, not on hinges. So there was no way the wind could have opened it. The front door to the house was still locked in the morning and all the downstairs windows were closed and locked as well. To this day, I am convinced someone was in the house, but no one had broken in and nothing had been stolen, and I was the only one who saw it. Bonus file written by Big Mark 54, the ghostly Jack Russell of 88. In 1988, a friend and I were staying in an extremely small, one-bedroom house for a week in the middle of the Allegheny Mountains. The closest neighbor was almost 5 miles away. There was nothing around but country. Late one night, we were up listening to music and heard a dog scratching at the door. It was a small, friendly Jack Russell, so we let it in and gave it some food and water. We were sitting in the living room when the dog ran past into the bedroom, then slowly backed out of the bedroom, growling and snarling with the fur on his back standing straight up. We both stood up, grabbed our jackets and walked out of the house. We stood outside the front door calling for the dog, but the dog wouldn't come, so we shut the door and walked away from the house to calm down because it freaked us out a little. We kept our eyes on the front door. There was no back door and the house was easy to see because the porch light was the only light around for miles. It was dead quiet. We didn't hear anything. We couldn't even hear the dog anymore. After about 30 minutes, we went back into the house and the dog was gone. We never saw it again. For a few days, we tried to figure out just how the dog could have gotten out of the house or what could have spooked it so bad that night, but we never did. The dog couldn't have gotten out without someone letting it out. We didn't see anyone come out, and as far as we could tell, there was no one around for miles. We didn't see another person or a car drive past the entire time we stayed there. Me and the friend that was there that day are still friends today. Every now and again we bring it up and try to explain it in a way that makes sense, but we never can. Case file number 1414, written by Kedzef, the Nocturnal Ballet in the Enchanted Forest. My house was located atop a hill and surrounded by woods. Various trails crisscrossed the woods, each very well maintained and wide. These trails were used by the county hunt, fox hunting, who would ride through every other weekend. My bed overlooked the woods and the trail. One autumn night, I looked out my window while getting ready for bed and saw a pair of lights moving along what appeared to be one of the trails. I instantly thought it was a car or something and wondered how they had managed to get on the trail. The next morning, I asked my neighbor, who said that some kids used to ride ATVs through the woods, creating a horrible racket. I assumed that had been what I saw. Over the next month, more and more pairs of lights appeared, until they would be 7 or 8 pairs going through the woods. I complained to my family about the lights, but as they didn't show up until at least 11 p.m., my parents and siblings were already asleep by the time the lights showed up. About 2 months into this, in roughly October, I could see the lights through my window as normal. I took a second to watch them go by, as they were fewer than normal, only about 4 pairs, and they were keeping very close to each other in a line. As they moved along the ridge of a hill, the front pair of lights split. The further lights stayed in line, but the closest light descended the hill at an incredible speed, all the while keeping pace with its mate. After a moment or so, the other lights began to separate, all the while maintaining equal speeds. This was impossible for any vehicle. The hill was covered with trees. After separating, some of the pairs rejoined, while the others began to fall out of sync and move around each other. I was in shock. The next morning, I immediately told my family. I was quite shaken by the event, but my family didn't believe me. As the lights continued to appear every other night, I continued to tell my family to no avail. I even tried recording them on my phone, but it did not have sufficient detail to catch the lights. It could catch a glimpse here or there, but no movement from my room. I was not willing to actually go outside and try to get closer. I eventually accepted that the lights were just there and actually enjoyed watching them. They began appearing slightly less frequently. By the time the trees had regained their leaves, I was unable to really see them at all, save for the occasional light moving through a break in the trees. I had also stopped mentioning the lights to my family. A few months later, my mom was returning home very late, around midnight, from an event. To not wake our dogs, she turned off the car headlights. As she moved up the driveway in the dark, she immediately saw what she described as 2 flashlights at the top of the driveway. She immediately stopped the car, terrified that people were trying to break into the house. She turned off the engine, hoping she hadn't been seen. The 2 lights moved cautiously down the driveway, to either side of the car. They moved too fast and smoothly to have been carried. As she looked out of the window, one light was only 2 or 3 feet away from the window. She thought the lights had moved to investigate the car. She described each light as about a foot wide. She instantly thought it must be some kind of bug, like some type of giant firefly. She lowered her window to get a better look, but there was no body to the light. The light also produced no sound. After 4 or 5 seconds, the pair of lights instantly moved at an incredible speed away from the car, traveling to a neighboring field. A few moments later, they disappeared back into the woods. The next morning, my mother was terrified and she told me her story. I instantly explained that it was exactly what I had been seeing, the lights in the woods. As I described my experience more, and she kept relaying hers, she quickly understood that whatever she had seen must have been what I had been seeing. My mom apologized for not believing me, but she remained disturbed by what she had seen. After that event, I only saw the lights a few more times. By the next fall, the lights had vanished completely. To this day, I have no idea what they were, and my mother and I have no natural explanation for their behavior. Having watched them at length, I can say their movements were not erratic or random. They moved apparently and deliberately along the paths, until they began moving down and through the hills inexplicably. Even when leaving the path, they moved in what appeared to be coordinated paths, almost like a dance. Despite the plethora of trees along the woods, they never appeared to collide with anything. Instead, they moved deftly around and through any potential obstacle. I sincerely wish I had a better phone at the time. The few videos I took on my Razr flip phone, this was back in 2005 or 2006, were so grainy and unusable that I didn't bother to remove them from my phone when I later changed to an iPhone. I'm not even sure I had the know-how to remove the videos at the time. As a final note on this rambling story, my mother later asked my neighbor about the ATV riders who used to go through the woods. He informed her that the kids who had been ATV riders had done that roughly 15 years ago. The kids had grown, their parents had sold their house, and he hadn't seen an ATV on the path for a decade. Case file number 1415, written by Corvell, A Journey in Mystery with 117. I just see the number 117 everywhere, or 1117 if I'm really lucky, a big 117. Most of my friends know about it because it's really consistent. My latitude and longitude fit snugly in 117, as does most of the region I move around. All the addresses in my neighborhood have it. I'll feel a moment of self-doubt and a car will drive past with 1 on its license plate. I'll look at a TV screen for the game my friends are all watching right as the players 11 and 17 walk past each other, forming the number. My friend thought it was weird, and I pointed out her debit security code on the back of the card was 117. Random, meaningless crap like that. I started counting them this year. I haven't run the numbers yet, but this month so far I'm in the 50s, and most months seem to hover around 7 or 80 sightings total. I assume it's because I've trained myself to see it, but how would that have started? Some of my other friends point them out too now, but nowhere near the same frequency. Plus it's a prime number, with no mathematical significance or pattern I can think of. And 3 digits to boot, if not 4. It seems unlikely to me. I've tried over and over to figure out if there's any significance to it, but the answer that feels most honest with my feelings about it is that it's just the universe giving me a little smile and a nod. No warnings or guidance, just a little, hey, keep it up. Case file number 1416, written by Arthur Sampson, The Walmart Quantum Resonance Chronicles. My friend Axel and I were on our way to our local Wally World, and I had a choice of 2 different vehicles for use at the time. A late 80s Volvo station wagon and a 95 full-size Chevy pickup. The Volvo had manual window cranks, the truck had power windows. While sitting at a light, my friend Axel rolled down the passenger window in my truck using a manual hand crank, which I didn't know at the time. I only noted his slightly odd behavior and body motions while rolling the window down, as well as the irregular movements of the window as it went down, as if someone was using a manual crank to roll down a power window. Anyway, we did our 2 a.m. shopping trip, back when Walmart locations were open 24/7. Got back out to the parking lot, and we couldn't find the car. Both of us had remembered driving the car up to the store, and he relayed the story back and forth about how he had rolled the window down, and I told him I had remembered that, until 10 minutes later, we found the truck on the opposite side of the parking lot. Wait, we took the car, right? Yeah, but I also remember driving the truck. Me too. So, Mandela? Crap, looks like it. And then the conversation moved on to the making of the Kool-Aid we had just bought, among other mundane topics. Seriously, it had gotten to the point where this kind of thing didn't even surprise either of us. But I digress. Memories from multiple timelines coalescing into a single narrative is very confusing during your initial encounter, but you do get used to it over time. It's called QRC, Quantum Reentry Confusion. In a nutshell, you blink, a squirrel across the street farts sideways, everything tastes purple for a second, and entire swaths of corporeal reality have changed around you in impossible ways. Axel actually saw that same Walmart switch locations across the street overnight. When he brought it up, I informed him that the Walmart used to be on the east side of the street, but had long since moved to the other side into a much larger building decades ago. More to the point, he's from Missouri, the state, and that Walmart in question had moved locations years before he ever moved to Colorado. And yet, he still remembers shopping at the location on the east side of the street for a few months before the event in question happened. There is literally no way he could have ever known the Walmart was on the east side of the street, and yet here we are. Anyway, after decades of study, I have a working hypothesis. Everything in the universe vibrates on a certain frequency, including, but not limited to, every atom, molecule, and quark in your body. This is known as quantum resonance signature. We all know that, right? Anyway, when the Mandela effect, for lack of a better term that everyone will understand, your quantum resonance signature remains the same upon entry into a new universe, and it doesn't exactly vibe that well at first. It does get better over time because your own personal QRS will adjust to your current surroundings as you coalesce. However, the initial shock does tend to catch most people off guard, far too much for most people to even process, let alone handle in an intelligent manner. They question their senses, their memory, and even their own sanity, while stretching the suspension of their own disbelief to the extremes in an attempt to debunk their own eyewitness accounts of the event, and finding a logical explanation for what is otherwise unexplainable. For most people, it's worldview shattering, once-in-a-lifetime event, and you always hear the same tale over and over and over again. I wasn't asleep, I wasn't tired, drunk, high, anything. I'm not crazy, blah blah blah. I know you won't believe me, blah blah blah. And you just get to the point where you're going, Oh, for frick's sake, get over yourself and just get to the point already. I'm getting bored here. Okay, maybe that's just me or us, I don't know. People need to get over the mind frick already. Accept reality for what it is, and just deal with the fact that their preconceived notions aren't half as concrete as what they thought they were. Most of the people that share these stories consider them to be completely unexplainable, breaking their brains on a fundamental level that they can never recover from. Whereas my circle of friends and I, yeah, we call that Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever day of the week it happened on. Oh right, it was Thursday. My bad. Case file number 1417, written by Tippet17, The Birthday Candle Enigma. Before going to bed, I always fill a water bottle. I often get thirsty and will wake up to drink periodically throughout the night. My water bottle will sit on my bedside table. Usually, I will go through about a half bottle a night. One morning I awoke to the water bottle half empty with an additional surprise inside. A birthday candle had been put in the bottle, not one of the thin candles either. The candle was a number 6 and would require someone to remove the lid to put it into my bottle of water. I am a very light sleeper, and my room is on the other side of the house away from the kitchen where the candles would have been stored. Additionally, the candles are in a cupboard above the refrigerator, which would require anyone to get a stepladder to reach it. I'm 6'2" and still need a stepladder to reach this cupboard. My house has wood floors and creaks with each step. There is no possible way I could have slept, walked, gotten a step stool, removed the candle from the cupboard, replaced the step stool, slept, walked back to my room, unscrewed the top of my water bottle, plunked the candle in, and screwed the top back on, all without anyone else in the house waking. To this day, I don't know how the candle got there. Case file number 1418, written by Strange Technology 322. A very soapy mystery. So, I was driving down my road towards my house, and I saw my neighbor spraying the road in front of his house, which is right after mine. I didn't really think much of it, figured maybe he spilled something and was spraying off whatever he spilled. I pulled into my driveway. I usually walk in front of my car, jump on my porch, and open the door. But this time, I walk around the back of my car, and when I look up, my neighbor is now spraying his car that's now on the road where he was spraying before. I figured his girlfriend must have just pulled up right when I was pulling in, and that's why I didn't see her drive up. There was just a couple seconds from the time I parked to when I saw the car, so naturally I'm expecting to see the driver somewhere either in the car or walking out. But she never walks into view, so I start walking over there myself. In my gut, I had a feeling something wasn't right. It was like I knew that car didn't just pull up and was there the whole time. But it wasn't there, or I would have seen it, right? So I walked up to my neighbor and said, "This is a dumb question, but was your car here the whole time, or did it just pull up now?" He looks at me a little funny and says, "No, it's been here for the past 30 minutes I've been washing it." I tell him that when I pulled up, his car was not parked here. I said, "You were spraying the road. There was no car." Not wanting to sound any more crazy than I already did, I turned and walked away. I've known the guy my whole life, so he just laughs, not realizing I'm freaking out inside. My heart was racing like I just saw a ghost or something. I seem to experience this type of glitch pretty often, but it's always something small like my lighter or something on the counter that I could have overlooked. Although it's been getting more clear that things are gone one sec, then back the next, there's still a possibility I just didn't notice it. I never really know for sure. This time though, I know for absolute certainty that the car was 100% for sure not there. The road had a big circle of soapy bubbles, and he was spraying in the center as if there was a car there, but I just couldn't see it. The neighbors next to him have a big trailer parked on the road, and I remember I could see nothing but pavement from where I was all the way to that trailer. No car in between. I think deep down, we all know that the world we live in is just too amazing for us to have it all figured out, so experiencing something like this is just kinda confirms something I already knew. And even though this has happened, it's almost as if it never happened. I still have 1,000,001 questions. Bonus file, written by Chili Bronson. Flickering Memories of a Pup. When I was a kid, my brother and I were staying the night over at a friend's house. We would hook up all the game consoles in the basement so their parents wouldn't hear our ruckus. It was a little creepy down there, Lights were always dim, and they had several old family portraits and photos on the walls. There were 2 pictures over a daybed in particular that always gave us kids the heebie-jeebies. It was a large portrait of the great-grandmother and another photo of the grandma in Auschwitz. So one night, a neighboring friend had brought her new puppy over. We were all playing an Unreal tournament when the puppy began weeping and growling and weeping and so on. The pup was staring at the portrait of the grandmother when all of a sudden the puppy flew off the bed a clean 5 feet. We all ran. Yes, we forgot the pup. Please forgive me. We were frightened children. And we sat in the living room contemplating whether or not we should wake the parents. We didn't. We told them the next day, and in typical movie fashion, the parents didn't believe us one bit. We didn't hear from our friend with the puppy at all the next day. She finally comes over a day later in the evening, crying hysterically, telling us her puppy had died. The vet said it appears the pup was crushed, and both the vet and parents wrote it off as a car hitting it, even though the pup was found in their fenced-off yard. Nearly 20 years later, and those memories still keep me up at night. A few other things happened at that house, but this was by far the scariest. Case file number 1419, written by Jeffrey. Gaming and editing across timelines. So this is about experiencing a jump to a new timeline, presumably after experiencing a death in the previous timeline. The idea being that rather than dying and either blanking out of existence or experiencing some afterlife, people will simply jump to a parallel timeline, one that recently branched off from their existing timeline before some event that led to their death. Often this results in things being slightly but noticeably different, leading to confusion and causing speculation that they just jumped into a new timeline. I've always found this intriguing and fun to speculate on, but it does make me wonder what happens when one gets really old. But anyway, that's not what I'm writing about. I had an experience a few weeks ago in which I seem to have experienced this, but the other way around. I seem to have experienced another part of myself, a parallel timeline self, jumping into my life. One thing I do as a hobby is make videos of gaming experiences. Not just play video games, but cinematic videos using the gaming world as my construction set. This can be quite engaging. So, the other evening, I was taking a shower before bed, and as I was sitting in the shower, letting the water fall on my head, I was reminiscing about the gameplay and editing I had just done that evening. That was all normal, except that I suddenly realized that was not my memory. I had not done that gameplay or the editing that I had such a strong, vivid memory of. The realization of this made my head spin. I suddenly felt a sort of vertigo. I felt unanchored to my reality. I was not on drugs or drinking, and I haven't for a long time. It really slammed me hard. I wasn't sure what was real, but I knew that those weren't my memories. I got out of the shower, still feeling unsteady, and walked into the bedroom, and my wife started speaking to me, asking me a question. It was a bit of a struggle, but I was able to answer, and in doing so, it brought me back more solidly into the normal reality. As I laid down in bed, I felt the memory of, or should I say, the false memory, fade away. I could remember having the experience, but not any details of the memory anymore. It was like the memory of a dream will fade upon awakening. In speculating, I wondered if some part of me hadn't died that evening of a massive heart attack or something and then jumped into my timeline. It made me think that maybe I should take better care of myself, as I thought that while I'm okay, I just jumped timelines. But what of my wife and family in the other timeline, and the pain they must be suffering? Well, I hope you all find this interesting. It's a lot to think about. Bonus file. Written by Bride of the Living Dead, When the Pillows Whisper. About a year ago, a woman wandered into the office I work for, but I'm rarely in because I work in the community. I had just happened to be there that afternoon to fax paperwork. She hands me a card and says she's a psychic massage therapist. I'm like, alrighty. She then is like, give me your hand and I'll show you how it works. So I give this random woman I've never met before my hand, and she starts to massage it, because why not? She then looks me in the face and says, stop taking your shoes off when you're driving. You're going to get in an accident. Also, "Your neck hurts because you shouldn't be sleeping with that many pillows." She bestowed me with some other weird tidbits about my habit of sitting on my left foot, and then she leaves a few cards in the office and pieces out. My coworkers that were in the office were standing there like, what the hell just happened? I was convinced one of them was messing with me. Now normally, I would write this all off as bullcrap, but I drive all day. Depending on the season, I either wear clogs or big muck boots that can easily be disinfected. I always take my shoes off because they slip on and off when I get in my truck, because it's easier for me to drive that way all day. It's something I've never told anyone. It's always just been a weird habit. And also something I only do at work because I don't drive that much when I'm not working. I still have her card, but I haven't scheduled a psychic massage yet. Bonus file written by Lawler Munn in the silence of dawn. My mother, brother, and I all live with my very elderly, late-stage dementia grandpa. My mom was his caretaker and was certified, etc. But when my grandfather died, it was just me and my mom that still lived with him. I distinctly remember waking up at like 4:30 or 5 a.m. randomly, something I very rarely do. I also felt weird and felt sad, but I felt like a force leading my eyes towards the window. It felt familiar, like it was my grandpa, but I shrugged it off and went back to bed. I woke up a few hours later for school, and my mom came into my room and closed my door and told me that my grandfather had died that morning at the same time I had woken up. My grandpa, who loved us all, but was very old school, let me know he was leaving when he died, but also put me back to sleep so I didn't have to deal with his passing at that moment. Apparently, the ambulance, my uncle, and my mom were all there through the night. My mom and uncle grieving and my grandfather made sure I didn't see. I was in high school at the time. I've never been able to explain it. It's almost like I had a weird connection with death. A similar experience with my dad's passing happened just a couple years later. I visited my dad with my cousin. She wanted to come with her because my dad had been dealing with his shortcomings poorly, drinking himself into a stupor more often than not. When I visited him, I told him that after my first year of college, I was going to come back and visit him, and that I wanted him to be there when I did. However, I knew he was going to die. So when I left his house, I texted my brother and told him exactly this. "Hey, I don't think Dad is going to be around much longer. Come visit him." Which is out of character for me. My brother visited him that next morning, also out of character for him, and found him dead in his living room. He had died the previous night, no more than a few hours after I left his house. Plus, he texted my other brother, who was a few hours away at the time, and told him he left immediately to come home, and my mom told me that something was wrong with my dad, and I knew he had died. Case file number 1420, written by Quail Plumes, Whispers of the Owl. When I was around 9 years old, my parents took me to a beautiful supper club in Wisconsin Dells for dinner one night. The supper club was originally built as a large cabin home in 1909, but the land was once a ceremonial ground for the Winnebago tribe before the pioneer settlers purchased it. The supper club has since been remodeled around the original architecture, and it is truly a visually stunning place. As a nature-loving kid, I was most intrigued by the many animal and bird mounts decorating the interior walls. The area where we ate that night had owls and hawks overlooking us. We had been sitting at our table for a little while before I looked up at the nearest owl again and suddenly gasped, excitedly pointing it out to my parents and saying, "Look, the birds move!" I had watched this owl's head swivel at least 90 degrees from looking towards me to turning away in the other direction. But once my parents were staring at it, it stopped moving. They glanced at it for several minutes, clearly doubting it had moved at all. But I argued that it had entirely changed the position of its head from one direction to the other. To stop my relentless staring, they persuaded me to ask our waitress if the bird moved, the next time she came over, to which her reply was something like, "No, none of the birds move. They were all alive once, which is why they have been preserved so nicely." There was no further need for me to be convinced that the owl was not robotic, as it obviously looked like a real preserved bird, but I still did not doubt what I saw with my own eyes, I was only upset that it only moved while no one else was watching. I tried to laugh off the bizarre occurrence, like my parents who were now teasing me about the spooky owl. But to this day, I remember watching the mounted owl swivel its head. Now a decade later, I've become a major bird lover with some of my most interesting experiences with birds being owls. So I like to believe what I saw that night was that good Hooter's spirit saying hello to me. Case file number 1421, written by Listerine 990. The Fireball, the Forest, and the Silent Strangers. When I was a kid, I saw a huge fireball in the sky through my roof light at night. I don't remember the time, but surely after midnight. There was no sound, which was strange. It looked so close and like a very big shooting star. I was confused and decided to go outside, live near a forest in a small town, and try to find where it landed or if there was any trace of it. I knew it could be an optical illusion, but it was very strange and I was sure I saw it for real. In the forest, I didn't smell smoke nor saw a fire, but there were a lot of people walking around either in small groups or some with their dogs. I greeted them, again small town, and they greeted me back like it was the most normal thing to do to wander around in the forest after midnight. I get goosebumps years later thinking about that and can't explain the fireball nor the people. Another story. We have a smart TV from Sony. Maybe someone knows if this is normal. On a Saturday night, me and friends were watching Netflix and I asked a friend to pause the movie. We have two remotes. The small one was on my side of the couch and another bigger one with more buttons was where my friend was. He paused it and suddenly a female voice started speaking. The movie was paused. The voice was much louder than the volume was set, and it was in English. TV settings are in German. She was reading down letters and numbers, and I was somehow shocked and didn't catch up with what she said. I tried to find out if there was a serial number of the TV or anything, but can't explain it. I wasn't able to find out which key or command it was on the remote, or what function was triggered there. This was very strange, but probably has an easy explanation. Bonus file written by a Mayrock, The Swimming Pool Prophecy. I was working alone in one of the dorms on campus. It was a summer break and the building was getting ready to be torn down. So I was just wrapping up cords for each desk in the dorms so they could be taken downstairs. I had my headphones on with an audiobook. Coworker had left for a moment. Then suddenly, I get this image of a person jumping or falling out of a window. I was thoroughly freaked out and messaged some friends to call me and talk. My campus is known for its hauntings, but I had never read about this specific building, so I talked to my friends. The image goes away and I forget about it. Fast forward 2 years and I'm at a different job and my coworker just casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, there was that guy who jumped out of the window in that dorm," referring to the one I got that feeling in. I could just feel my face go white. I completely forgot that whole incident. So I looked up what she said and sure enough there was someone who did jump off, similar to what I pictured. Another time this happened, actually before this previous incident, I was swimming in the gym and I got this image of a girl fully clothed and drowning. I freaked out and got out of the pool before deciding to call it a day. A couple of days later, I went back with a friend. We were swimming and I heard someone calling for help. There were 3 people in the pool and the lifeguard, everyone swimming. I jumped out and started crying. Someone actually did drown in that pool. The haunting stories involve this kid, but I distinctly remember it being a woman or a girl. I haven't been to another pool to swim laps since. Things that make this weirder. I don't believe in ghosts. For me, everything has an explanation. These instances have literally no explanation. Case file number 1422, written by Reiku 10126, The White Beasts on Loxahatchee Road. Years ago, me and my brother got ice cream from Carvel and were driving home when I made a wrong turn and ended up on this dark road with no streetlights and so much wood. We were driving when this large white creature thing ran across. My brother and I almost hit it, but something told me to keep driving and don't stop. I thought it was a dog or a fox or a panther, maybe an albino one, but it just didn't match the description. It did kinda look like an albino deer, but larger and scarier. We sped home, ice cream dripping from how hard we clinched it. I just remember this sense of dread. We both took long showers, and I spent time reading and listening to bhajans, religious Hindu music. I needed some to keep me calm, and that was it. There was just something so menacing about that event. I didn't get Carvel again for a while because I kept thinking of that night and that thing. I still am not sure what it was. It was in Parkland, Florida, on Loxahatchee Road. The road leads to the Everglades too. If anyone has any ideas, I would love to know. Case file number 1423, written by FLC Warings. Diabolical Doodles. So this was a couple years ago. I was 17 or so at the time. My mom, little sister, 14 then, and uncle all lived in a rented 4-bedroom house together. It was a really weird setup with additions that obviously happened at different times, because the front door was in the garage, so you had to go through this metal gate. My mom was very adamant about it always being locked, night and day, full house or not, and go through the garage to get to the front door. In the garage was a little room that was kind of a setup as a workshop but also perfect for storage, and my mom had a bunch of holiday decorations boxes we put in there. So, Halloween comes, and we go in there to get the boxes, and I find a little leather notebook. It was nice, so I grabbed it because I really adore nice journals. After everything is decorated, I look at the journal, and it's mostly gibberish. A lot of scribbled out stuff I couldn't read. Very messy handwriting that did not match anyone in the house or anyone I could think of. I asked everyone if it was theirs, and they all confirmed it wasn't. Whatever, I liked it. It's mine now. On the bookshelf it goes. No creepiness yet. Christmas comes around, Mom's favorite holiday, so there are a million boxes we need to grab, and we go into the garage storage room. We're grabbing boxes, and in the middle of the 2 boxes is a piece of paper from the notebook, the one I found a few months before. Which is really weird, since it wasn't there when we moved in, or when we were putting the boxes away after Halloween. Also, the notebook has been in my room this whole time. The writing this time was a little more unsettling. It was written in a very childish handwriting. A lot was scribbled out, very rough, like enough to indent the paper, almost rip the paper through, and random words that once again were gibberish. This was a little freaky, but not freaky enough to get rid of the notebook, which hindsight could have caused some crap. I really liked it. It was pretty and fit well with my collection of notebooks. I didn't ever use it though, because spooky, I guess. We lived there for 2 years. Nothing big happens. We get some loud noises occasionally. Wasn't super old, but probably built in the 70s or 80s, so we figured it was just normal house noises. Things sometimes go missing. My sister and I get a sort of off vibe from the house, but my mom isn't a big believer in that stuff. She thinks it can maybe possibly kind of probably happen, just is very doubtful it will happen to her. Parents in a horror movie type, for sure. But anyway, nothing super scary happens for 2 years. Now we're moving out. I'm assigned to grab the holiday bins because apparently it makes sense to make the 5-foot child-sized girl grab heavy boxes. Oh well. I go in there and I'm moving boxes out of the room, no biggie. I moved 1 box and nailed, and I mean nailed. There wasn't drywall in there, just heavy, thick plywood, and it was in there with actual nails that you would have to hammer into the wall. So behind this box we have moved plenty of times and definitely would have seen before was a shirt with the front of it with quite a bit of blood on it. My blood to be exact, because of a bad nosebleed, which is extra weird because I've had maybe 6 or 7 in my life, but they were always very heavy. This also happened before we moved into this house, and I was pretty damn sure I threw away because 1, I remember doing it, and 2, why would I ever keep it? This scared me, I think rightfully so. So badly, I ran in the house and immediately told everyone I refused to finish the job. My sister also refused, and my uncle had to finish and take the shirt down, plus throw it away. My mom was even too freaked out to deal with it. And the thing is, I know it wasn't a prank. My mom is not at all like that. My sister isn't devious enough or tall enough, 4'10", and the shirt was about 6 feet up the wall, to accomplish that. And my uncle would for sure do something like that, but he is the type of person that he wants you to know once it's over that he accomplished that, and that he was the mastermind who pranked you, basically immediately. So, some 5 years later, I would definitely know about it. Plus, we didn't live with him at the time I threw the shirt away. It's still one of the creepiest things that has ever happened to me, and anytime my sister and I bring it up to my mom to discuss probable explanations, she dismisses it rather quickly and seems visibly rattled by it, which freaks me out more because she is not that type. It's still one of my favorite scary stories to tell because what the hell? Case file number 1424, written by Speaker 11. The quarter that slipped into another dimension. I was living with a few buddies while in college, about a decade ago, when we were all chilling in the living room on the couch playing Smash Bros. I mindlessly picked up a quarter from the coffee table and just sort of tossed it back on the table while waiting for my turn to play. The quarter hit the table and slid off the back, landing on the floor audibly with that signature wobbly coin hitting the floor sound. You know, the one where it's kind of spinning on its sides? So a few minutes later, I got up to go get something to drink, and on my way back, I went to pick up the quarter that fell on the floor, but it wasn't there. Not only was it not there, but not anywhere in the entire room. It couldn't have rolled anywhere, and there were no cracks, vents, or holes in our floor. Absolutely zero explanation for it falling off the coffee table and disappearing from reality. Since then, I've read several theories about the chances of objects just passing through other objects, but with incredibly insane odds that it would ever happen. If anyone knows what I'm referring to, feel free to remind me. So maybe it just ended up in my downstairs neighbor's apartment? No idea. Bonus file written by Cowtown Keener. The mystery of the flying paint cans. Okay, if someone could explain this one to me, it would be great. It's really weird. I was staying at this old 1930s house in a rural town with my dad and sister. There was an old stairway up into the attic with a door at the bottom. The attic was more like a bedroom, really, than the type of attic you see in most houses. I think they probably used it as a storage room. At the top of the stairs, as you entered the attic, there was a deep cupboard on the right-hand side with a door. The type of cupboard you could crawl up inside and hide in if you wanted to. So anyway, there was nothing up there except a bunch of old empty paint cans that were stacked in the cupboard with the door closed. The first night, when we were going to sleep, fairly late, around 11, we heard this crash from the attic. We went to check it out. The cupboard door had opened and the cans had all spilled out all the way down the stairs, which would have required them to turn a 90-degree corner, and all of them lay at the bottom of the stairs now. Weird, right? Anyway, we went back to bed, and the next day, my dad put the cans back in the cupboard and closed the door. The next night, around the same time, the same thing happened. Door opened, cans at the bottom of the stairs. This time it was really creepy, but my dad put them back again the next day, pushing them all the way to the back of the cupboard so they wouldn't fall out again. This night, instead of just the cans falling down, there was this loud crash from the attic. My dad ran up and I came up with him. The cupboard door had blown off its hinges, fragments were stuck in the ceiling, and most of the door lay across the room on the floor. It was the most terrifying scene I've ever witnessed. The cans were again at the bottom of the stairs. We looked in the cupboard to see what could cause it. There was nothing, just wooden walls, ceiling, and floor. We left everything as it was this time. It was just too freaky. The next night, nothing. Anyway, we left after that night. So far, my only theory is in the line of ghosts. Not very original, but I honestly have no clue. I'm a pretty handy guy too, and nothing about this made any sense to me. Bonus file written by Lily001, The Shed of Shadows. I remember that one night, it was nearing midnight and I was home alone. This happened when I was 18, waiting for my brother to come home. We lived out in the country with no neighbors, so I felt comfortable with the front door unlocked as I was chilling downstairs in the living room. Then, out of nowhere, I hear a loud crash coming from the bathroom to the left of the kitchen. I froze for a good 3 to 4 minutes and I was terrified. It sounded like someone had thrown a rock at the window in the bathroom, and our bathroom window was the only one that was a fully glass window, as all the other ones were plexiglass. Then after a while, I managed to calm myself down and figured that the shower rod had fallen as it had been happening for a while now. Before I walked to the bathroom, I locked the front door and then made my way to the bathroom. Nothing was out of order. No broken glass, no fallen rod, nothing at all. So I went upstairs and wondered if it was something upstairs that had fallen. I checked all the rooms and nothing looked like it had fallen. My brother's window was open, but it was the opposite direction that I had heard the sound from. I closed it and locked it just to be safe and went back downstairs. Then I reasoned that it might have been something behind the house in the shed. I called it a shed, but it was more like an old porch that had been fashioned into a shed. So like an idiot, I grabbed a kitchen knife and ventured outside behind our house. If this was a part of a horror movie, I'm sure I would have been killed. When I got back there, nothing looked out of place. The ladder hadn't fallen, nothing was knocked off from the shelves, nothing. So with my uneasiness growing, I ran back into the house and locked the door again, and messaged my brother to call me to open the door when he got home. I never found out what was behind that loud noise or why it happened. Case file number 1425, written by Bonita246. The Santa Claus Guardian. Since Christmas just passed, I was reminded of a miracle I was witness to a while back. This had to be about 15 years ago. I was about 26 years old. I had left a 3-year relationship and started up another one with the man who is now my husband. I was so in love with my previous relationship and talking so much about how marriage and happiness was in the future. That relationship didn't work out. However, I was ashamed or more disappointed in the failure of the whole thing and wanted to prove to others that I made the right choice. I didn't want to ask anyone for help. I know that was dumb. Anyway, I didn't have a car, and instead of asking my mom for a ride, because my ex used to take me back and forth to work, I decided to use the city's cab service. It ended up getting really expensive, and oftentimes I barely had enough money to get back and forth to work. Sometimes I even walked, and it was a whole city away, taking about 2 hours to get home. Anyways, I was a manager at McDonald's, and it was stressful. One cold winter night, I was stressing badly because I didn't have enough to get home that night, and it was way too cold to walk. On a break, I decided to walk down to the busy road in the dark and smoke a cigarette and cry and think. The road is a straight one, and I could see in front and in back of me clearly, across the street as well. I got a little down the road and the Santa Claus looking dude approached me. I was totally creeped out, but remained friendly throughout the encounter. The man said hello and asked me how I was. I spoke back and told him I was okay. He said something like I shouldn't be walking in the dark, being a young lady. Then he said that I looked like I could use some money. I said, don't we all, and giggled a little. He said, I have this for you, and gave me a $50 bill. He said the only thing that he wanted in return was a hug. I was thinking, that's weird, but gave him a hug. He said Merry Christmas and went on. I immediately turned around behind him to go back to my job to check if the money was real. However, when I turned around, not even a minute after he passed me, he was nowhere to be found. Not across the street or anything. It was as if he just vanished. I was beyond creeped out at this point and rushed back to the restaurant. Turns out the money was actually real. I was able to get a ride home, plus some other things I needed until payday. I eventually swallowed my pride and finally worked out a deal with my parents to take me back and forth to work. I'm reminded of that night from time to time, especially when I'm low on cash and it seems like I'm in an impossible situation. I don't know what happened that night, but I'm forever grateful for that Santa-looking dude. Case file number 1426, written by Mikey J777, An Engineer's Weird Summoning. So one thing that I can point to that is truly unexplainable. I was around 30 and was using this standing meditation book, The Way of Energy. My sister, much more into spiritual things, and I've always been the engineer type. But she had a friend that once told me that my feet were spiritually black and dead. Still no clue what he was talking about. One of the standing meditation things was to somehow focus on your center of mass and imagine some connection to the ground below. I figured, well, let me focus on this, and maybe my feet will not, be dead. While I pictured this, I felt this thunk into the back of my neck. I can't really explain it. I didn't move, I didn't make a sound, I just felt this thunk feeling. Now here's the weird part. My dog at the time would like to sleep behind me while I was standing and meditating. When this thunk thing happened, my dog got up, went and hid behind a chair, scared by whatever just happened. She hid and looked around the side of the chair at me. I remember looking over at her, thinking, what the hell just happened? I can't even start to hypothesize what went down. Bonus file written by Impenetrable Onion 88. The perfectly spooked Bobby. Me and my husband, boyfriend at the time, were living at his mom's place. They just got a new kitten, Bobby, who we now have adopted, and we were playing with him in the hallway. We had stopped playing and walked into our room. About a minute or so later, he started playing with the door. He would run down the hall and then wall kick off our door and would make a loud bang. He still wall kicks in our apartment all the time. I would open the door and he'd attack me and then run away. I'd then shut the door. This happened 4 or 5 times, with about a minute or more wait in between the next attack. I just shut the door and turned around, with my hand barely off the handle, when it sounded like a body was thrown into the door several times. We looked at each other like, you heard that right, and I opened the door right away, and there was no one there. Bobby was nowhere to be seen, and in the split second it took me to open the door, he would have still been visible in the hallway. We then tried to replicate the sound. My husband, who's 180 pounds, couldn't get the door to make the same sound. He had to physically pick the door up and then body slam it to get it to sound somewhat similar. No idea what it was, but freaked both of us right out. Bobby didn't play with us the rest of the day. The craziest part was, after that, my husband told me that something similar happened to his mom and stepdad in the master bedroom, with the bathroom door, which is one of those sliding pocket doors. I had never heard that story before we started dating. So many weird things happened at that house. I'm so glad we don't live there anymore. Case file number 1427, written by Kime Reads Reddit. Vash's cryptic adventure that will blow your mind. The husband and I had a dog named Vash. Vash was a neutered at the time, blue heeler who would sometimes hop out of the yard and go exploring. Probably because he was an unneutered dog, but I digress. So one Saturday, he escaped and we went looking for him. Most of the time when this happened, we would either find him out in the neighborhood or in the pound, or he'd come back on his own. This time, he was gone for 2 days. We checked the pound, he wasn't there. We checked in the house, in the closets, under the beds, etc. We even tried bribing him to come out of hiding with sandwich meat. A very food-driven dog. This usually worked. But this time, he was just gone. My husband was sure he was dead somewhere because Vash never stayed away from home for more than a day. So he came home from work on Monday and started to unlock the door when he heard a jingle from the tags on their collars. So he looked around the front and backyard. No Vash. So he goes back to the front, opens the door, and boom, there's Vash in the house with both doors locked. We asked the neighbors if they let him in and then locked the door. They did not. Vash died 10 years ago, and it's still one of our greatest unsolved mysteries. We also aren't sure where he came from, as he was discovered by a cross-country skateboarder tangled up in a fence somewhere. Case file number 1428, written by Night Fury 620. The Prophetic Toddler. So let's see, something unexplainable. When I was young, maybe 3 or 4 years old, my family lived on the second floor of a 3-story apartment. I was going about my day, walking and crawling, when I started singing a song that my aunt was thinking. I started about halfway through in the exact place she was in. This surprised her a lot. Then I said it would rain. It was cloudy, so it wasn't that far-fetched of a thing to say. However, I turned to my parents and said again that it would rain, but it'd rain in the bathroom. My parents just shrugged it off as toddler nonsense. But later that night, at dinner, we heard the sound of heavy rain. However, it wasn't coming from outside. I yelled that it was raining in the bathroom and ran to it. My parents got up and stopped me from running, and to the great astonishment of my parents, it was raining in the bathroom. However, to my mom's great dismay, it was raining from the faucet, air vents, shower, and bathtub faucet. The deep yellow of urine was soaking the brand new bathroom decorations my mom had bought. Everything was ruined and soaked. My dad ran upstairs and went to their bathroom as the kids there had been left alone. He turned off the water from the toilet and the bathroom stopped raining. Thankfully, we were able to clean up all the urine, but we had to dump all the towels used to clean up the urine. My parents don't know how I knew, nor do I know how I knew this was going to happen. I haven't had any other experiences similar to this. It was simply unexplainable. Bonus file written by J Show 1. My spine-chilling encounter in Jack the Ripper's Square. So, between 2007 and 2011, I used to work for a large bank in London just off of Broadgate. My train commute to the city from my hometown places me at Fenchurch Street Station, about a 10 to 15 minutes walk to work. Now, as an avid lover of London and the city, you will get to know various places and their stories. Obviously, as a young child growing up in a family from East London, Jack the Ripper always fascinated me. My chosen walk to work cut through Mitre Square. For those of you not in the know, Mitre Square was the location of the Ripper's fourth victim, Catherine Eddowes, in September of 1888. Knowing that Catherine's murder occurred on the 30th of September, I was going to mutter a little rest in peace to myself as I walked through the square that day. Now, as you walk through Mitre Square, at the time, there was a small passage called simply Mitre Passage. It was a dark and slim alleyway, made up of two derelict buildings. They were being demolished to make way for new offices, with an atrium that would let you look straight up into the sky above. About 20 or so feet up, you could look into a window which was a walkway over the valley below. Now on this day, I'm walking through and saying my respects. As I look up, I see a young girl looking down at me from the window in the alley. She's wearing an old Victorian nightgown, and she's framed by candlelight placed on the window ledge in front of her. She's brushing her hair, and as she sees me, she smiles. Me not paying any mind at all, looks up and smiles back, continuing to walk through the passage. It's only 20 or so steps past the passage that it dawns on me that the buildings are empty. No one should be in there, let alone be dressed in a Victorian garb and smiling down at me. I didn't go back, for fear of seeing something that the back of my brain told me shouldn't be there, although now I wish I had. I did occasionally walk through the passage on that way to work until I could no longer due to the new buildings. However, it still stays with me today, just wondering what I actually witnessed. Case file number 1429, written by Banethil. An entire town vanished after midnight. About 20 years ago, my friend and I were driving in the deep country after midnight. We liked to go and try to get lost. We were on a straight stretch of road that had no intersecting roads for some 50 miles, maybe more, that we'd never been on. We came into this tiny little town and stopped at a 24-hour gas station to fill up and buy drinks and snacks. It didn't even register at the time that a gas station in the middle of a podunk town would be open that late. The lady behind the counter rang us up and said, "You need to be out of town before 1. Freaked the frick out, my friend and I bolted and continued our trip, nervous about what she meant. We were out of town with 5 minutes to spare and kept going on that stretch. Another hour into our trip on the same road, we decided we were going to head back home. We turned around and went back the same way we came. We decided we were going to stop at another gas station on the edge of town, if it was open, because we were some thirsty bros. An hour goes by and nothing. Another 5 minutes and it's a cornfield. We thought we were just tired and misjudged the timing. We made it to the other end of that road without finding that town. It freaking vanished. We checked several maps and it was a cornfield through. We checked MapQuest, yes, that long ago, and it was a freaking field. The next day, no crap, there were news reports of a small group of cheerleaders that went missing along the road. Totally freaking gone, no trace at all. All these years later, there's still no bodies and no evidence, and the car is just gone. There's a record of a town being there some 100 or so years ago, but there have been cornfields there ever since. We swore to take it to our grave, but I had to open up and get it out. Case file number 1430, written by Wolfseye 555, The Silence That Speaks Volumes. My family owns this property that used to have a restaurant on it. By the time my parents bought it, the restaurant had long since been torn down, and the only things that remained was the foundation and the pole that the sign for the restaurant had been on. Even though it was located in a very rural area, it's not a quiet place. It was located next to one of the few highways in the area, and there was a pond behind the property where a lot of wildlife would gather. Between the cars, the bugs, the birds, and the rowdy trailer park nearby, there was constant noise, for the most part. While wandering around the property one day, I was playing near the back end of the foundation when suddenly all the noise just stopped. No sound of cars passing by, no chirping of birds, no buzzing of bees, just silence. It wasn't until I left that particular spot that there was noise again. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who experienced this. My dad and my brother both told me that there was an odd period of silence at a specific spot. I found out later that the reason the restaurant was torn down was because the couple that had owned the restaurant died there. This might be wishful thinking, but maybe nature itself wanted to have a moment of silence for the lives lost in that area. Bonus file written by Firewood666, The Unexplained Flickering in Illyria's Historic Home. Back in my hometown of Elyria, Ohio, after my parents got divorced, my mom lost the house because of my dad, so we moved most of our stuff into my grandpa's house and lived with him for the next 2 or 3 years. This house was the first house on the street and pretty much qualified as a historical building. My mom told me about a tree in the backyard that was really huge and old that my grandpa had cut down for some reason. My grandpa was an electrician, technician, and had a lot of computers which he fixed for people who needed help. The basement was full of electronics and wires, and I'm almost certain he installed some of the lights down there himself as he built an entire section of the house. The story starts here. I was 9 or 10 years old. It was nighttime, and my older brother was upstairs. There were no adults home because my mom was at college and my grandpa was in the hospital. I was hungry and wanted to get a can of corn from the basement, like all little boys do. So I walked over to the basement stairs and turned on the lights. Nothing came on. I flickered the lights a little bit, still nothing. This happened after a family friend died, and upstairs my brother and I confirmed that there were ghosts, so I didn't go upstairs after dark without my mother home. Anyways, I grabbed a flashlight and went downstairs. I pulled out a stool and stood on it underneath the shop light, incandescent. I reached for the chain thinking it was off, but I was too short. Suddenly, the light turned on. I froze for a good 5 seconds before running upstairs and turning off the light, going back to the living room. After that day, I stayed in the living room all night till my mom got home and put me to bed, because I was too scared to go upstairs to sleep in a bed without my mom. To add insult to injury, the house had 2 bathrooms, one upstairs and one in the basement. But we had a good big fence in the backyard, so everything was fine. I'm sure there is a perfectly logical explanation as to why a 40-plus-year-old house would have the basement lights flicker, but my 10-year-old brain didn't care. And I still don't. That house is haunted, and I'll never go past the living room without someone with me at night, even if my grandpa becomes healthy again. Case file number 1431, written by J. Triz. The Mysterious Midnight Melee in Small Town, USA. I lived in a very small mining town in western US as a teenager. Pre-cell phones, pre-internet, pre-parents giving a crap what their kids did, ever. On several weekend nights, 2 of my friends and I would tell our parents that we were all going to crash at one of our houses for the night. Our parents were always fast asleep by 10 p.m. and did not want to be disturbed, and stupidly thought we'd just spend the night watching movies and playing Nintendo. The parents wouldn't even check with each other to verify where we were, so we had free reign. We would usually wait until 11 or 12 or so, then leave and drive somewhere. All of our houses had sloped driveways. we would roll the car in neutral out into the street and start it there to be sure no one would hear, kill the motor and roll in on neutral when returning. Some nights, we would drive half an hour to the next town over, a slightly bigger town than the one we lived in, to do whatever. One particular night, we grabbed takeout dinner at a small restaurant that stayed open late, then snuck into a movie theater and caught the end of a movie. Everyone knew almost everyone in these tiny towns, and the adults who were out late didn't care that the kids were out late too. After the movie, we aimlessly drove around the town for a while, listening to music, talking. There was next to nothing to do there. That night, we drove through some of the streets with houses just chilling, killing time before heading home. We were a bit off the grid, but not too far. These were small streets with houses, front yards, streetlights, sidewalks, and some streets would just end and you'd have to turn around and trace your way back out. Turning a corner, we drove into some crap that I've never before seen and didn't understand. Keep in mind, it's around 2 a.m., and standing in the street are maybe 50 guys, separated into two groups, facing each other, all armed with makeshift weapons and armor, one group advancing towards the other. Most are holding garbage can lids as shields. This is pre-city provided plastic bins, so almost every house had their own metal cans with removable metal lids. Some of the guys have other makeshift shields like hubcaps, and one dude had what I thought was a washing machine door rigged up with ropes to hold it like a shield. And they all have weapons. Wooden sticks, baseball bats, mallets, long staffs. I didn't see any blades or firearms. And they all have helmets. Mining hard hats, football helmets, and some even have a medieval-looking homemade metal helmet. It was cold. They were in jeans and boots and coats. We stopped, our headlights blaring upon them. It seemed like we drove up just as they were about to clash, because the group that was advancing on the other all turned around, and both groups just froze and stared at us wide-eyed. My friend threw the car in reverse, and we noped the hell out of there. As we turned around, some of the guys started walking towards the car, and none raised their weapons or ran towards us, but still, we were freaked out and peeled out of there and drove the hell home. It took a few minutes before one of us finally spoke and said, "What the frick was that?" To this day, I have no idea what that was all about. I wonder if anyone else has ever experienced or seen anything similar, or if anyone can shed light on what the hell these guys were up to. Or just have a laugh with me as I recall this experience. An actual fight? A street gang battle? A joke? A Renaissance reenactment? There were so many guys, and their weapons and armor were so deliberately homemade that it seemed unlikely to have been an impromptu fight. We wondered if they did it to surprise unsuspecting drivers and get a laugh out of it. But at 2 a.m. in this small town, they'd be lucky if anyone drove up their street at all. We didn't tell anyone, and of course didn't tell our parents. Moved out of that town some years later and had never been back. It's been decades now, but that remains one of the most unexplainable things I've ever seen. Would love to hear others' thoughts. Bonus file written by Lee's House 90, the mysterious woman who rescued my diabetic mom. My mom is a type 1 diabetic, has been since she was 11 years of age. When me and my little brother were very young, I was about 7 and he was 5, I came into my mom's room to find she was acting extremely strangely. She looked almost drunk and wasn't really responsive. I went to pick up her insulin needles to see if she would react to that, and she didn't. So I panicked and phoned my nan, who told me to put the phone down and dial 999. For some reason, I was so frightened and confused, I didn't. And instead sent my little brother outside to get help while I tried to get my mom to respond to me. My brother came back in crying, saying he couldn't find anyone. And then about 5 minutes later, this woman just walked into my mom's bedroom, called me by my name and my brother's. She said she knew my mom and help is coming. She was calm, soft-spoken, and had a warm feeling about her. I didn't recognize this woman, and neither did my brother. Shortly after, the ambulance arrived and got my mom's sugar levels back up. And when I went to find the woman, she was gone. Like, literally gone. When my mom came around, I explained to her about this mysterious woman and what she looked like, and my mom had absolutely no idea who she was, and we never saw her again. If she didn't help us, my mom would have died eventually. Still gives me shivers now. Case file number 1432, written by Jeanne Dewberry. A dark figure vanished 2 meters behind me. I am a very rational person, and I have been thinking of this happening since it happened. Talked to many people I know about it, and they all got goosebumps when I told the story. I'm still not sure what happened. A person disappeared 2 meters behind me. I was sitting at night on a bench between 2 old cemeteries. Actually, it's one, but it's separated in 2 parts with a passageway through. No one is buried there for a long time. It's in the middle of a big German city. People go for a run or for a walk there, and I like being alone at night to not get bothered by people. So I don't think it is haunted or anything similar. The bench on which I sit is almost in the middle of the pathway, and I have a clear view to both endings. The area is quite bright because there are streetlights. Not very bright, but when you sit there for an hour, it's bright enough to not miss anything. So there is no place someone could hide without me noticing, and there are high walls on both sides. On both ends, there are streets with bright streetlights. The bench is on one side of the path. The path is approximately 2 to 4 meters wide, and I am facing the northern part of the cemetery against the wall, but the path goes in front of me, so people have to walk past me. On the right side, there is an area with grass, gets relevant, with table tennis plates and some more benches, and there is a fence with bushes. No one can come or leave without using the path. So I have to pee, and I always check if there is someone around so that I don't bother anyone. I checked both sides, no one was coming, so I stood up, went behind the bench I was sitting on, and walked like 1 meter to the wall with a tree with 2 stems, like a V. I double checked if someone was coming, nothing to see, nothing to hear. So I started peeing, and when I was almost finished, I saw through the 2 tree stems a dark person walking in the middle of the path towards me, under the not so bright streetlights. I thought, okay, I must have missed him. He just appeared, but I could have missed him. When I saw him, he was already on the path, about in the middle of it. From my bench to the street, it's probably like 20 to 30 meters. Could have been a quick walker, but that means I must have seen him earlier, but okay, happens. I could not see much, no face, no bright hands, just a black person. Could have had a dark skin color. I thought, okay, I have to go through this situation. I clearly heard him walking towards me and coming closer. I finished peeing, adjusted my clothing, hearing him come closer so that he would pass me. I turned around, but purposely in the right direction. He came from the left. From the bench's view from the right, I was standing with my back to the bench behind it, so that I don't have to interact with this person. I heard him while turning around, expecting him right in front of me, and there was no one. The sound of the steps were gone. I was shocked. I took a look around, the direction he was going. No one. I thought he might have turned around, but also no one, in any direction. He couldn't have walked 30 meters in 1 second. Then I thought maybe I was misinterpreting the sounds, and he quickly went to his right side on the grass and went to a bench there. So I took my very bright keychain flashlight and took a look around. I went to the grass area, and again, there was no one. I looked behind every tree and found no one, and watched both sides of the pathway. The ends on both sides are very bright, and I looked at the very possible location someone could have been hiding. There was no one. It happened a couple months ago, and I'm still trying to figure it out, because I heard those steps. Bonus file written by Bartolone. The ring, the whiskey, and the emotional night I'll never forget. My dad was terminal. He was in his 60s and was at my childhood home, in bed, asleep. The day prior, he had been loaded up with morphine or something similar to let him die peacefully. I am a college kid at this stage of life and a total mess. I love my dad dearly, and he was a great man. Before I went to the house, I picked up some whiskey. I didn't know how else to numb what I felt. I went into his bedroom as he lay there asleep, just me and him. I started sipping and sat there thinking how much I love this man. I went through most of the bottle and fell asleep. Me in the chair beside him, just us two. I woke up. I had no idea how much time had passed. I looked over at my father, and he had reached out to me. I held it. He then reached for his other hand, and took a ring that he wore for years off his finger, and then brought me close to him and said, "I love you," and put the ring in my hand. Something he had never said. It wasn't like I didn't know, he just never directly stated it. It was what I think is called a signature ring with his full initials. Then he took his last breath. I sat there with him, with his heart not beating anymore, and cried quietly. After some time, I walked out of his bedroom to where many family and friends had gathered and said, "He is gone." I always thought that he coming to consciousness after days of sleep and saying goodbye to me was extraordinary. Thank you to anyone listening to this. It was great to think and talk about this special moment in my life. My father's last moment. Case file number 1433, written by Boneless Mega Bat. The Christmas Time Warp. December 25th at 6 p.m. Something really weird happened. I ordered food at a local restaurant that I know was open, even on Christmas, and the phone goes to a voicemail with no message. Okay, fine, it's Christmas. I chose another restaurant in the next town over. I visit their website, click the link to call, place the order, and head out to pick it up. It's 2 exits away on the highway. I drive past the first restaurant and see it's closed, all the lights are off. I get on the highway and see exit 6. I need the next one, exit 7. There are no cars on the highway with me. I see lights way up ahead, but no surrounding vehicles. A song I love comes on the radio that I almost never hear played, and it glitches out and the music stops. I look down to check it and it comes back on, but it's a different song, even though the radio says the first song is still playing. Not a big deal, but in looking, I see on the car clock that 20 minutes had passed and I have only been on the highway for what should have been about 5 minutes. I double checked the time on my phone. 20 minutes had passed. I see the next exit coming up, and it's exit 3. 3? Somehow I'm on the wrong side of the highway, much farther down. I think I must have gotten on the wrong ramp, which I never take because it leads to rural areas I never go to, and misremembered seeing exit 6. I get off on this unfamiliar exit and try to turn around, but can't find the other side of the highway. I grab my phone and turn my GPS on, but the home buttons on my phone are jumbled. I pull over, power cycle the phone, get the GPS working, and it sends me in actual circles. About 10 minutes later, I find the highway, and I'm back in the right direction. There are cars everywhere now. I reach the restaurant. They don't have my order, and say I never called them. At this point, I'm almost completely out of gas when I had enough to make a round trip at the start of my journey. I pull into the gas station next door and fill up. I get back in my car and reverse search the phone number I called. It's to a restaurant I never heard of. I went back to the website I visited to place the order. The numbers don't match. I look up the address of the other restaurant, head there, pick up my order, and start home. On the way back, I pass the first restaurant again. It's open, with a line out the door. I pull into the parking lot to sanity check. I call their number. They have been open all night with no phone issues. I get home and my partner asks where the hell I've been. I really wish I had asked him to come with me. I have zero explanation for what happened, for what anything at all happened. Nothing makes sense. Case file number 1434, written by Doot Drop. Data lost in time. When I was in my early teen years, me and my best friend used to walk around and go into different stores just for something to do. There was a Rite Aid, retail and pharmacy, for those of you who don't have them, that was in our neighborhood that we would frequent a lot. Whether it was to buy drinks and snacks, look at makeup, or just use the bathroom. This particular thing apparently happened in 2011. Fast forward to 2022. I'd been dating my boyfriend for about a year now, and he's been the assistant manager at that same Rite Aid for about 3 years. One day he called me and asked me if I'd ever lost a phone or an SD card in the Rite Aid. I hadn't. I have absolutely no memory of ever losing an SD card of mine, and have never lost a phone ever anywhere. If I had, I know it'd be something I'd remember because it would have been a very miserable time for me as my parents wouldn't have been able to get me a new phone for a while. Or if I had lost an SD card, it would have also been a very miserable time for me because that means I would have lost all my pictures, downloaded music, contacts, etc. And as a teenage girl in 2011, those were very important things in my life. So I told him no, I'd never lost either of those things, and definitely not in that Rite Aid. I asked why. He told me he was cleaning out the lost and found drawer with his coworker, and they came across an SD card in a little clear plastic box. His coworker was able to put it in his phone because he had an Android, and my boyfriend wasn't really paying any mind to it. But when his coworker started telling him what he was finding, which were videos and pictures from concerts. I did go to concerts very frequently around that time. And also that there's a bunch of pictures of a girl with blue hair. My boyfriend's ears sort of perked up. I've had blue hair on and off ever since 2011. Sure enough, he looked at the photos and they were of me, from 2011. This was an SD card from one of my old phones, from 2011. It is now 11 years later that he's finding this. It's been sitting in that lost and found drawer for 11 years, and now my boyfriend, out of all people, just so happens to find it? I have no recollection of losing an SD card, especially not in a Rite Aid. I even searched my social media from around that time. I tweeted every moment of my life around that time, and there was nothing. Surely I would have tweeted about losing my SD card and being mad and upset about it. But I swear there was nothing. I do not know where the SD card came from. I definitely don't know how it ended up in that lost and found. And I don't know how or why it's been sitting in that drawer for 11 years and why out of all people, my boyfriend was the one to discover it. Case file number 1435, written by Belak 4862. Our 20-mile leap in just 10 minutes. I had just picked up a coworker from her house heading to work. We are just talking and chatting. How'd your weekend go type of stuff. We are maybe 5 miles away from her house when all of a sudden we realize we're in town pulling into her working parking lot. We both kind of look at each other not sure what happened. We had gone near 20 miles in the blink of an eye. And what cemented this experience is something that actually happened, and not just simply losing track of time, is the time. It should have taken us almost half an hour to get to work. Instead, the time from when I picked her up was 2:30. And the time when we got to the building was 2:40. There is no way in hell we could have gotten there that fast. From that point on, we both called that experience the time when we jumped, like from the movie Jumper. Case file number 1436, written by EvenAd1701, a frosty mystery. I moved in a really cold climate, around -30 Celsius, -4 Fahrenheit, and for the last 3 or 4 days I had to wear my scarf, the sort that covers your face and ears. Yesterday, I wore it to collect my package and came back. 20 minutes walk. The weather is so cold, there is no chance for me to take it away anywhere during the walk. Besides, I had headphones on too, so it's not possible to take the scarf away without taking the headphones off. I didn't stop anywhere along the way and headed directly to the postal machine and back. Came home, put my hat and scarf on the shelf, and started checking out my package. All was fine. Except in the evening when I was dressing up again to go out for a drink. The scarf was nowhere to be found. I live in a really small shared dorm room and don't have a roommate right now, so one shelf is empty. I checked every part of my small shelf 5 times. My desk, under the bed, bed sheets, my bag, the kitchen, bathrooms, nothing. Went to the dorm help desk for lost items as a last resort and it wasn't there either. I tend to lose some stuff and find it shortly after, but this is different. It's like you came home with your pants on, but then your pants are nowhere to be found. Creepy file written by Zero Tesaurus Zero, the unexplained disappearance of my best boy, Voyu. My dog literally vanished. We locked the house with the dog in it to go get some food. When we came back half an hour later, he wasn't in the house anymore. There was no possible exit for him. No windows, no holes, nothing. We were 3 to have seen him inside the house before we left. The only explanation we have to this day is kind of crazy and we can't prove it, so we'll never be sure, but here it is. One of our neighbors was an old lady. We were nice with her, despite the fact that she was kind of a cold type of person. Sometimes, we did some mutual favors like in a typical neighbor's relationship. But over time, she started to become more and more weird. Later, we learned she had developed a form of dementia. It was quite sad to watch her become more and more crazy, for lack of a better word. In the end, her son put her in a mental institution for old people. A few years later, we started connecting the dots. Before she drifted into insanity, we once gave her a set of our house keys so she could water the plants and take our mail during vacations. She kindly accepted, and that year, we brought her back a nice gift from her vacation to thank her, and she gave us back our spare keys. But now we think that, at that time, she was already starting to lose her mind without anyone really noticing. Because a few months later, coming back from the grocery store, we found her inside our house. We locked the house, yet she found a way to get inside. It was really disturbing, and we discovered that she had another key. The only possible explanation was that she had a copy of our key done while we were on vacation. So back to the vanishing of our dog. Our theory is that this crazy lady had in fact multiple copies of our house key, and then she let our dog out, or she brought him somewhere else, or even killed him. That's the only possible explanation we have found after all these years, but it's so crazy that it's hard to believe, even for us, and we just can't be sure. As for the old lady herself, she sadly died a few years later in the mental institute. I was angry with her for a time, of course, but ultimately her story was mainly sad and painful. She was a victim of her own decaying brain, and there was nothing she could have done against it. In the story, I've lost my childhood best friend. He was a Briard, and his name was Voyou, which means kind thug in French. For years I felt guilty over his vanishing, replaying the scene in my head over and over to check if I hadn't missed something. But in the end we'll never know, and that's what is actually the worst. Case file number 1437, written by Vault Dweller 529. Billie Eilish hijacked our minds. A few months ago, I was in a Discord call with my friends. After I left, I had the stupidest thought of thinking if I was taller than Billie Eilish. Went to watch something, and half an hour later I got a message from one of those friends saying I was taller than her. It would just be a funny coincidence. They were looking at celebrity heights after I left. But a couple weeks after that, I had another stupid thought before going to bed about how I would like to go under the truck like in Need for Speed games when I get my driver's license. That same friend had a dream that night that I drove under the truck during my driving test. Both of these were just my thoughts, and I hadn't told them to anyone before these strange things happened. So those were probably just coincidences, but still kinda weird how similar they were. And I should also say that both of these thoughts happened to me while I was looking for something to watch. Case file number 1438, written by Kit the Human, The Supernatural Sapphire. One time, a few years ago, I was making some jewelry. In this case, I was drilling a hole in a broken sapphire crystal to turn it into a pendant. It was not a valuable crystal or anything, could probably retail for about $20 at most. Well, sapphire is hard to drill, so after a time I set everything down and went downstairs to pee or make some tea or something. I wasn't gone for more than a couple minutes. I wedged the sapphire into my jewelry box before I left, sticking it firmly in the ring holder area so it wouldn't roll around. The crystal was long enough that it held the lid slightly ajar. I left the box on my bed. So I came back 2 minutes later to find the lid was completely closed. I opened it and the crystal was gone. It wasn't anywhere. Not beside the box, not around the area where I was working. I even searched and changed the sheets and moved the bed. It was nowhere to be found. I never found it in the remaining year I was there. Now I live alone in the house, one of those British terraced houses. You could only get in through the front door, and it was narrow enough I'd see or hear anyone moving through. No one was in the damn house. What the hell happened to that crystal? Other weird things happened there, but that was the most striking. Case file number 1439, written by Dabby Dabby Doo, Seconds from Disaster. I once hit a semi-truck on the highway. I was 18, driving a bit too fast. Came around a corner and a deer jumped on the road and I slammed on my brakes. My old crappy car looked up and skidded straight. I thought, okay, well, just go into the ditch. Then around the corner, a semi came towards us. I grabbed the wheel as hard as I could and tried turning, but nothing. My best friend is beside me. Seconds before impact, I let go of the wheel and looked at my best friend in the eyes, trying to say, I'm sorry. and we braced ourselves. This was in the middle of nowhere. Now it felt like time slowed down. I was seeing everything, and when I looked to my right, there was a man in a pullout, standing beside his car with his cell phone. This was around 2006, and to me, cell phones weren't as common as today. And I thought, weird. Everything raced in my mind. This is it, I'm gonna die. No, it can't be, it can't. And closed my eyes to die. The semi-driver was able to jackknife it to his right for a split second before impact, and back, so just my side smashed into him, and we flipped over and spun. I remember hearing it. I don't remember feeling it. I opened my eyes and was right side up. My best friend climbed out of his window, but I was out of it, and he pulled me out. I stood there looking at my smashed pop can looking car and thought, holy crap. And then I fell over, pain in my leg like crazy, like pain I've never felt. That man in the pullout came running over and said he called 911, and then knelt beside me, asked if he could pray for me, and asked if I'm hurt. I said it felt like my leg was shattered. He prayed for my body, my mind, and then he left. Before the cops came, before the ambulance. At the hospital, they ran tests and x-rays, but no broken bones, nothing, barely a scratch. It's like the Unbreakable movie. The cop said I'm lucky. The doctor said I'm lucky. My mom came to get me and didn't let go for a long time. We went to the impound to get stuff from my car. It looked so bad. The guy there said he's amazed I'm not hurt. He told me to look in the car, and I looked. And the engine and parts of the car were pushed to within a foot or so of my seat. The steering wheel was bent up and within a foot of the chair as well. I asked if anything had been done to it. He said no, they just towed it and put it there. Bonus file written by Local Boy D, The Nightmare on My Street. I was feeling down one night and wanted to take a walk. My road is relatively calm during nighttime, besides a few addicts that make small talk. Well, I start feeling this feeling that something just wasn't right, and I normally feel paranoid, but this feeling started to make me physically sick. Well, I look around and my eyes catch this thing just peering at me behind a trash can. It was long as hell and purely black. It had long black hands and just stared at me. Wasn't moving or nothing, and all I saw was this bright red eye staring into mine. I've never been so freaking scared in my life. I turned and started running back to my house. When I got at least 5 feet away, I looked back and it was just gone. Never again did I see that monster. Case file number 1440, written by Inner-Nothing7779. A clean-shaven hero appears in the trailer park swamp. I was 8. We lived in a trailer park in Florida. I lived across the street from a row of trailers that had no one living there, and behind them, swamp. So there were no hoses hooked up to any of them. My brothers and I played around these trailers all the time. Anyone who has lived that far south knows about fire ants. These guys suck butt. They're aggressive, they bite and sting, and can do so over and over again. They defend their nests with vigor. So 8-year-old me was playing around an empty trailer one day and not paying attention. I stepped, barefoot and in shorts, into a nest. I didn't realize it until I felt the first bite or sting. Wasn't more than a second or two. By that time, my leg was covered in ants up to my knee, all of them biting and stinging and working their way higher. This both hurt and terrified 8-year-old me. What does a terrified and hurt 8-year-old do? They scream and cry. I was stomping my feet to get the ants off. They found my other leg too. This only angered the ants more. Out of nowhere, from behind the trailer, the side that faced the swamp, came a man. He was clean-shaven, kept hair, and clean clothes. He had a water hose. He promptly sprayed my legs to get all the ants off. He then told me to run home to my mom. We never saw him before, and I've never seen him since. The trailer had no hose. To this day, I have no idea who he was. In my mind, I have pictured him as my then-dead great-grandfather, who had died 2 years prior, but I honestly cannot be sure. Case file number 1441, written by Bandicoot SVK. How do you know a dream from real life? I once went to sleep and woke up a few hours later. However, I could feel that there was something terribly wrong. I was sleeping on a sofa that I only had like 10 years ago. When I brushed through my hair, it was in a buzz cut like I used to wear when I was 13. I've looked around, and sure enough, my room looked the exact same way as back when I was 13. When I was leaving for school, I met my sister in the kitchen, which was weird to me because as of the time as I'm writing this, she moved away about 6 years ago. So I went to school and sat through several classes, and I could not focus on them because I knew what was going to happen to me in the next few years, and it was so freaking weird. I came home, gave my friend a call, and I met him outside of my apartment building. We walked for a bit, and then sat down on a bench. I just outright told him that I've probably gone back in time and woke up in that body. In that dream, I was already an adult, and I knew exactly what was going to happen to me and to him in the next few years. And the only thing he told me was, "Are you sure this is not a dream as well?" Or something to that extent. I then looked to the spot where he was sitting. He was not there anymore. He disappeared. I started running around, panicked as crap. There was no one on the streets, no cars driving around, just parked cars. I could hear nothing besides my beating heart, my panicked breath, the sounds of my steps, and the wind blowing. Suddenly, everything was covered in snow and ice. I tried to go back home, but I noticed that everything was distorted or twisted in some way. Cars that didn't have plates on them, weird trash bins. Everything was off in some way. When I realized that something was really terribly wrong, and I wasn't just imagining things anymore, I woke up. What the frick even happened to me there? When I was in the dream, everything was literally real to me. I could sense textures, sounds, smells. I heard people talking coherently. It was so real that I was literally convinced that I woke up from a dream, in the dream, and that I knew what was going to happen in the next 5 years plus. Yet only towards the end of that dream, I've realized that nothing I've seen or felt that day was real. I don't know if I've accidentally stumbled upon some supernatural realm, or if it was a lucid dream or something like that, but I freaking swear that every bit of that dream felt as real as every other day of my life. Bonus file written by Shock, dreaming of a grandfather I never knew existed. When I was younger, I had a dream about a man sitting on a porch, wearing a bright green t-shirt and a cowboy hat, playing a guitar. It was almost like I was sitting in the front yard, looking back towards the man watching him play the guitar, rocking in his chair. The screen door opened slowly, and a small girl with beautiful black curly hair stepped out, wearing a white and blue checkered dress. She walked directly towards me, and seemingly vanished in front of my eyes. As soon as that happened, the man stopped playing the guitar and stood up, waving in my direction. I woke up and didn't think much of it. I couldn't have been more than 7 years old at the time. A few days later, my family went to visit my great aunt. As I was doing kid things, running through the house, I noticed a photo. The photograph was of the exact man sitting in a rocking chair on a porch, a guitar leaned against the wall beside him, and a little girl sitting on his lap. It definitely shocked me and confused me, but obviously none of my family members believed I had a dream like that before. I later found out that the man was my grandmother's father, and the girl was her older sister, who passed away at 10 in a horrible farming accident. When I found all of that out, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. At the time of dreaming this, I had never seen the picture or any other pictures of the man, nor did I know that my grandmother had any other siblings that I didn't already know. I'm still unsure how my brain had any clue of this, or if it even did. Surely it wasn't a coincidence. I'm also sure it meant something, but maybe I still haven't figured that part out. Case file number 1442, written by Anonymous. The main bridge that connects into the multiverse. My wife and I were driving back from a family event in eastern Maine, using a GPS, maybe smartphone, maybe just car GPS. It was really foggy, and we drove over this narrow bridge where we both felt really tense as we crossed, kind of inexplicably, but also maybe just because it was narrow and it seemed like if a car emerged from the fog coming our way, there might not be room to pass. I remember once we crossed, we both remarked how weird it was, and how I felt like we'd almost been kind of yelling with stress as we crossed, even though I knew we hadn't been. It was total silence. Anyway, I've made that trip most years of my life, and I have no idea where that bridge is. There's one bridge that kind of looks like it, but it's definitely a decommissioned rail bridge and not even something we could accidentally find on ourselves or cross. This happened in like 2015, and I'm not really a superstitious or spiritual person, but there's a small part of my brain that feels like we crossed over into a crappier timeline today. I mean, it's not like things were great in 2015, but a lot of that would never happen things have happened since then. Case file number 1443, written by Squeezebox12. The Bathroom Portal Mystery. Over winter break, I took my 14-year-old daughter shopping at a mall in the big city we're originally from. I had to use the restroom, so we found a ladies' room, and when we went in, there was a line of 3 or 4 women waiting for the 4 stalls, which all seemed full. Other women were washing their hands. It was quite a busy scene for such a small restroom. The woman waiting right in front of me was middle-aged, wearing a tight-fitting, younger-style clothing, dark skinny jeans and a bright-colored shirt, possibly red or pink, and tennis shoes. She had full, thick, long reddish hair. I remember she went into the first stall when it became free. As I was now first in line, I scrolled on my phone while I waited for another stall to open up, but it seemed like a really long time to wait. I turned around to look at my daughter, who was standing behind me, and she shrugged, frustrated at how long everyone was taking. Finally, I thought to bend over and look underneath, which I hadn't done before since there were several people in line when I came in, so I assumed they had done that already. I was absolutely shocked to see that there were no feet under the first stall, but I figured I got mixed up, and I just went in that one to take care of business. After my daughter and I left the bathroom, we were walking back towards the stores. I said, "That was weird. I saw the woman in front of me go in the first stall, but then it was empty." And her eyes got big as saucers, and she said, "I did too." We both very specifically remembered what the woman looked like, that she went into the first stall, then totally disappeared. She was way ahead of us in line, but we didn't see her at the sink washing her hands or passing by any of us or anything. We never saw her again. My daughter is an extremely observant person who's always looking around and remembering things. I am much more spacey. So it really freaked me out when she corroborated my story. Is the mall ladies' room a portal to another dimension? Bonus file written by PMO09, Christmas Shivers. This is going to sound stupid, but when I was a kid, I swear I saw Santa, or someone in our house on Christmas Eve. Basically, the story is this. It was Christmas Eve and the whole family was asleep. Being a young kid, I was super excited to wake up the next morning and open presents. My room was located at the end of the house, and the hallway outside my door looked directly into the family room where the presents and tree were. In the middle of the night, I woke up from excitement and decided to take a peek down the hallway to see if Santa had come yet. In my family, Santa would leave bigger, unwrapped gifts by the tree overnight on Christmas Eve. I got out of bed, opened the door, and looked down the hallway. At first it was dark, so all I could see were lights from the stereo and VCR and some light from the street. Once my eyes adjusted, I saw a hand waving at me, sticking out from behind the wall that divided the hallway from the front door. It was a dark green glove with white trim, just like a Santa glove would be. I just stared at the arm as it slowly waved. I was frozen in fear. I ran back to my bed and started to cry. Eventually, I got up and sprinted across the hall into my parents' room. I told them what had happened, and of course, they thought I had just had a bad dream. Looking back at it, it's probably what it was, but it's such a vivid memory for me, unlike any other dream I've ever had. Case file number 1444, written by Narrateer, Wi-Fi Network, Ghost.net. I'm many varieties of engineer, electrical engineer, specializing in radiology and wireless signals, and all of the IT and computer and network engineers and architects. I've even built wireless, cellular networks. I have built segments of the internet. I've built devices that run these systems, and more. One time, I set up a new personal phone and instantly received new texts from various friends that died semi-recently. I didn't know the times well enough to tell you that year or in the last 18 months or whatever. They also all certainly died at different times, months apart each. The messages were all generic greetings. Hey, hi, what's up man, etc. All the messages came at once, and not one was from anyone currently alive. I have always presumed it was something to do with idle accounts or phones or something, and my firing up and connecting a new device resulted in some stuck-in ghost messages bouncing around in some queues to get released. The messages I received were not the most recent they had sent to me, nor were they in the most recent chats even. Problem is, I intimately know systems like that very well, having specialized in many of them. This is not how the SMS/MMS system works. Messages are not held that long in a glitch state, and if something busted, then it would have affected the whole pipeline of communication to my device, therefore should include recent communications, aka from living people too. My first instinct was great, I'm tripping balls, I don't believe this. Showed it to other people for my own sanity, then proceeded to never think about it much until now, after my initial deep dive into trying to explain it. Anyway, that's all I got. Must be a ghost in the shell glitch, but was more than enough to get me all deep, contemplating life for a bit. I guess I'll find out what's up when it's my turn to get hit by the bus. Case file number 1445, written by Slayer of Dungeons. My phone played hide and seek with me. I'm at a loss to explain this one. Just this morning, as I was riding in a friend's van to work, I dropped my phone to the floor. It's very important that I tell you that I watched it fall to the floor of the van and slide under the seat I was in. I quickly reached down to where I saw it fall and looked around for it, but I couldn't find it. The person sitting next to me said they'd call it, but when they tried, it went straight to voicemail without ringing. At this point, I'm pretty upset. Not only did I lose it, but without the ability to hear it ring, I had no hope of finding it. When we reached our destination, all four of us searched the van floor for it, and we all came up empty-handed. Not wanting to give up, I told my friend to try and call it again, knowing it would be hopeless, but what else could I do? To everyone's shock, we all heard the ringtone coming from where I was sitting. I followed the tone to the seat and then to a small compartment on the driver's side wall of the van. So a few things don't make sense to me. The first being that I watched with my eyes the phone fall to the floor and slide under the seat. The next thing being that when someone called it the first time, it just went straight to voicemail. So I'm not sure what happened between falling under the seat and magically teleporting into a compartment, but it seems like it didn't have service for a while wherever it went. Or whatever theory you could come up with, I don't know. Let me just rule out this being a prank as well. So it's just me and the other person in the back of the van. We're sitting in the very back. There was no one behind us, and the phone slid backwards, which would be back where there was no one to quickly grab the phone and pocket it or whatever. I don't believe anyone could have grabbed it to play a prank like that at all. Bonus file, written by That Bearded Guy 94. Ghostly visitor knows secrets and then vanishes. Sitting on my parents' porch as a kid, they lived on the second floor. Guy's walking on the sidewalk and yells at me and my friend who was hanging out with me. Just say hello, tell us how nice of a day it is out. Then proceeds to inform us that in the house next door to me, someone died in that attic. We acted surprised and just let him say his piece. We looked at each other for a second, and when we looked back, 2 seconds later, he was gone. Nowhere to be seen, and we had a pretty good view of the whole street. The reason I said we acted surprised to hear someone died in the house is because we already knew someone died in that house, because my friend's grandpa owned it. When we told his grandpa about the guy that talked to us, it turns out he fit the description of the guy who died in the house. Similar thing happened to the two of us when we were chilling in a baseball field throwing some balls. Old guy, different guy, walked in the field to tell us about God, and how God presents himself in many ways. I'm not a religious guy whatsoever, but my friend is. He was actually pretty engaged in the conversation. When the guy was done talking, he said, "See ya," and when me and my friend looked at each other to say how weird that guy was, the guy disappeared 2 seconds later. My friend believes that it was God talking to him. Maybe it was, and I hope he keeps that memory like that. Both times freaked me out though. Never had any more events like that happen, probably because we told each other if something like that ever happens again, we weren't going to take our eyes off the person. Written by Mary Dankmas, Josh peed, and Josh vanished. When I was a kid, there was another kid from the neighborhood across the street named Josh. He would play with us sometimes when he decided to cross the road and pop by. My friends and I were all fishing in the pond in our neighborhood, and Josh walked up and asked if he could join. We said sure, and I gave him my pole to use. I had to run to my house for some reason, so I got on my bike and rode home real quick. When I got back, My other 3 friends were there, but not Josh. I asked where he went, and one of my friends said, "Is he not by the bushes?" I said no. My friend told me Josh had walked over to the bushes to pee real quick, and that was the last he'd seen him. These bushes weren't more than 30 feet away from us, and they were easily in our frame of view. The bushes were against a brick wall, so it's not like he could just have walked behind them to another street and left. The only way out of those bushes was directly towards us, yet none of my 3 friends saw him come back. We never saw Josh again after that. We knew he lived in a neighborhood across the street, but didn't know where his house was, so it's not like we could knock on his door to find him. That was 15 years ago. I've looked up missing child reports from that area during that time frame, and I've never found anything about anyone named Josh going missing. It makes absolutely zero sense how he vanished like that. He couldn't have been abducted. That's too loud. He couldn't have walked away out of sight. That wasn't possible. I even considered my friends were pranking me, but they've brought it up too in recent years. I highly doubt they'd keep a prank going that long. I really want to know what happened to that kid, but I don't think I ever will. Case file number 1447, written by Vision Quest 9054. The mysterious incident that disappeared from the news. I live in a rural city in Washington state, and there was a major collision on the road near my house early Wednesday morning last week. I was on my way to work, but got stopped by the local deputies directing traffic at the accident scene. I had to call my manager and tell her I would run late due to the backup. Well, I tuned into the local news after work to hear the details, and as it turns out, there was no accident. I understand that a minor crash could escape the local news headlines, but this involved multiple vehicles. I remember seeing 3 ambulances parked next to the police. It was nuts. The following day, I scoured the local news and the police Facebook updates to learn more about the large wreck, only to find it empty. I have asked neighbors and local police about it, and they have no recollection of it ever happening. Even worse, a local resident that I was chatting with on the morning of the accident was nowhere to be found today. On my way home this afternoon, I asked a local dog walker near the previous accident scene if he knew the guy I was talking to the previous day. I described the witness from head to toe so that there wouldn't be any confusion. At first, the dog walker looked at me with a dumbfounded expression, and then his expression changed to one of annoyance, as if he thought I was making a stupid joke. He told me that the guy I had allegedly spoken to had been dead for over a year. Case file number 1448, written by Disastrous Babe 90. The moment my boyfriend vanished mid-conversation. A few months ago, my boyfriend and I were coming home from a trip to visit my family. We live in a small, second-floor apartment that overlooks our parking lot. We were unpacking the car, bringing stuff upstairs little by little, and my family had sent us home with a lot of food, so one load we brought up all had to be unloaded into the fridge. As I was unloading the food, my boyfriend was standing at the counter and we were having a full conversation. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it was something you wouldn't just walk away from. Anyways, he's standing there, and as I'm talking, I turn around to put something in the fridge, but when I look back, he's gone. I was confused because again, we were in the middle of a conversation, but I was like, is he hiding from me? Is he playing a joke? So I started laughing and looking for him around the apartment. After a few minutes, I was like, what the heck is going on? Because he was nowhere to be found. Sometimes he steps onto the patio to smoke, so I opened that door, and while he wasn't on our patio, I saw him downstairs unloading the car. I was really confused about how he got downstairs so fast and why he left in the middle of our conversation. Well, he came back up a few minutes later and had to knock because apparently the front door was locked and he didn't have his keys. How did the front door get locked with him outside without keys and me not knowing that somehow he left? The front door is in the kitchen I was in. I would have heard the door open and close, but I heard or saw nothing if he'd left. I was also just literally putting something down in the fridge, so I had my back to him for like a split second. How could he possibly get to the door so fast and I didn't see anything? None of it makes sense to me. And when I asked him about it, he had no idea what I was talking about and no memory of our conversation while I was unloading the food. So strange. Case file number 1449, written by Ginger Locks. Flip-flopping ducks twisted our reality. My daughter got a book for Christmas. It's this really sweet little book that plays the tune of row, row, row your boat, and each page has some artwork on it. The first page has 4 ducks floating down the stream, 3 yellow ducklings, and 1 brown duck. The ducks are all facing the same way. Now this is important. My daughter is 1, so right now she loves counting and repetition. Every time we see the ducks, she points to them, and I count them out aloud. I've done this at least 100 times already, and I'm not even kidding. She loves this book and won't leave it alone. My husband has also read it to her loads, and he saw that she was pointing at the ducks, so he started counting aloud too. I was reading it to her this morning. It's a very short book, only 8 pages. And my husband was watching. Everything was normal until my daughter flipped to the first page again with the ducks, and my husband and I at the same time went, "What the fluck?" The duck at the back of the line is facing the other way. I crap you not. I've looked at these ducks so many times over the last few days. I've counted them out God knows how many times, and they were all facing the same way. I would literally bet my life on it. I thought at first I could maybe explain it as an overtired parent getting it wrong, though honestly, I know this book like the back of my hand, so it seems like a massive stretch. But it's also the fact that my husband noticed it at the exact same time as me, and was weirded out by it too. We both looked at each other and back at the duck, and were both in agreement that it's changed. Bonus file written by Savory Type 306, glaring yellow eyes beneath the table. When I was 16, I was home alone in our living room watching television. I had a horrible sense that something in the dining room beyond the wall was watching me. I ignored this feeling for hours on end. I could feel the hair rising on the back of my neck and I gave in. I peeped my head over towards the dining room, and underneath the dining room table were 2 eyes larger than billiard balls glaring back at me. They were fluorescent yellow with vertical slits. Not a cat, not a stray creature, but otherworldly. After a good 6 to 10 seconds, I managed to thrust my body backward and convince myself that I did not just see that, but I did. This occurred around 6 or 7 p.m., and I felt its presence remain for nearly another hour before it had moved on. I remember the feeling, and I remember the exact feeling when it had left, like a spell had been lifted. My father had come home sometime around 9:30 p.m., maybe 10 p.m., as he worked retail and frequently had to close. As routine, he would treat us to a meal at our local diner, and upon arrival home, our chandelier that hung above that dining room table was shattered into a million pieces. My father recalls this and claims I threw a party while he was at work, and a friend had broken it. Bonus file written by Cake701, Spectral Splashes. Growing up, I'm in 5th grade. Brother is in 1st grade. We had just moved into a new, older house a few months ago. New neighborhood, school, friends. Sometimes I would hear what sounded like water running. Different times a day, not all the time. Couldn't figure out what it was. Talking to my brother, he said he heard it sometimes too. His bedroom was in the back of the house, opposite the hallway, while mine was towards the front of the house. Brother said he always thought it was coming from somewhere towards the front. I said I always heard it coming from further back. Went on for months, hearing it occasionally, and it lasted maybe 30 seconds. One night, I needed something from my mom who had the bedroom across from my brother. I left my room and headed down the hallway, passing the main bathroom. I hear it. It's not water running. It's too forceful for what sounds like not much water. I'm so scared I ran the rest of the way to my brother's room. I said, "I heard it. It's coming from the bathroom. Go see what it is." He says, "No way, you go." Mom, from her room, says, "What? What are you guys doing? You're supposed to be going to bed." Brother and I looked at each other. Neither of us wants to tell Mom about the weird sound and that we're scared. We didn't have the kind of mom that was going to take any funny business when we were supposed to be going to bed. So I just went into her room and told her what I needed. Whatever that was, I don't remember. Then I sit on her bed because it dawns on me that I have to walk back down the dark hallway to get to my bedroom. Mom is looking at me like, anything else? I say there's been this water-like noise that bro and I keep hearing. She says it's probably nothing. Go to bed. I just turn and get up and slowly walk to her door and look down the hall. Nothing there. I practically ran past the bathroom and into my room. The noise continues for months, sporadically. I can hear it at night when the house is quiet a lot. One morning I'm getting ready for school. I'm in the bathroom. It is separated by a full wall between the sink area towards the door and the toilet and tub area towards the back. Looking in a big triple mirror, brushing teeth, I turn the water off after rinsing my toothbrush and the sound is there. It's coming from the back of the bathroom. I'm crapping my pants scared. I backed up away from the mirror, eyes glued towards the back of the bathroom as more and more of the back of the bathroom became visible around the wall. Back up so far, my back is against the wall. I can see everything now but the toilet, which is right behind the partition wall. I slide sideways, back against the wall, slide further. My cat AI is sitting on the toilet peeing. I let out a breath so big that I had been holding, and gulped air so fast I sputtered and bent over gasping. AI jumped off the toilet and sauntered out. I went running down the hall to tell everyone that I had just caught AI peeing in the toilet. He had trained himself this whole time. Case file number 1450, written by Big Ghost 420, The Mario Galaxy Connection. There were a few times when I had a weird, hyper-realistic dream. Sometimes predicting very minor events in my life, or going back to a moment in my life where some weird things happened. 2 dreams I can vividly remember is when I saw my room fully set up with a black Vizio TV and a lazy boy bed/couch. And the other was when I went back to a moment in my life that really creeped me out. But since I had the dream, I know what that was. I'll explain in a bit. Dream 1. This dream was a while ago, around when I was 15 or 16. I'm 20 now. So when I had this dream, I was sleeping on the floor in my room since my sister had recently moved out and left me her room. I had only 2 dressers and that's it. In this dream, I saw the black Vizio TV I mentioned and my black lazy boy, couch and bed, with a black metal frame. I woke up and thought nothing of it. A month or 2 later, my dad took me to Walmart and I got a bed. Not just any bed, but the lazy boy I saw in the dream. I had forgotten the dream at this point, and my dad was the one who chose it, so I wouldn't exactly say I chose it because of the dream. Next, a few months pass by, and my birthday comes along. My dad bought me a TV, because he knew I didn't have one yet, and it was the exact same black Vizio I saw in my dream. At this point, things didn't click until one day I took a nap, and when I woke up, I was in the exact position I was in my dream. This position being me laying on my back, facing the ceiling with my head under the armrest closest to my TV. I look at my TV and boom, things click. I immediately remembered the dream I had and knew the scenario I was in was the exact same down to the position my TV was to where my head was placed. Dream 2. To preface my story, I want to tell you of something that happened to me and my older sister when we were young. When me and my sister were 7 and 12, we were playing Super Mario Galaxy on the Wii. Masterpiece of a game, by the way. We were on a sand level, where we had to go up a pillar spinning and filling with sand in a desert level. When I suddenly whipped my head around to look at the door of my room at that moment, my door started to open slowly, as if someone was peeking in, but nothing and no one was there. Yet I felt as if I had looked into someone's eyes. The door slowly closed, and me and my sister looked at each other pretty spooked out about what just happened. I jumped up and ran to the door to try and catch whoever peeked in, but no one was there. My bed was close to the door, so they wouldn't have had time to get far, but still nothing. Not knowing what it was, we chalked it up to a ghost and went on playing, admittedly a little scared at that point. Now here's where things get weird. Years and years later, I had a dream where I felt like I was actually really awake and heading to the restroom from my current room, my sister's old room. I say I felt awake because I felt the cold of the kitchen floor late at night on the soles of my feet. I walked to the restroom, swaying a little bit. I thought nothing of it because I thought I had barely woken up. I walked to the restroom, but stopped at the hallway where my cousin and aunt's room, the restroom, and my parents' room are. I turned to the right and walked towards my parents' room for no reason. I open the door enough to peek through, and I see something a little shocking. I see my younger self and my sister, but younger, playing Super Mario Galaxy in the exact same spot in the exact same level. Then my younger self whipped his or my head around and looks me in the eyes. Then we locked eyes for about 30-ish seconds. I then slowly closed my parents' door and woke up from my dream. When I did wake up, everything about that day suddenly made sense. I felt as if I was looking someone in the eyes because I actually was, me. I was looking into my future/current self's eyes. When I woke up, I felt an emotion I can't exactly describe, and my eyes started to water. The emotion I felt is somewhat like happy, shocked, in a state of understanding. Case file number 1451, written by WolfWrites89, Snowy Canine Teleportation. It's been a snowy week where I live, and I had a weird glitch with one of my dogs last night. One of my dogs is happy to stay out in the snow until we literally drag him inside or entice him with treats, while the other prefers to go in and out every 20 minutes all day. Last night, I let the in and out dog in. He brought a chunk of ice with him and happily laid down to eat it. I went down to sit in the living room, and my husband unpaused the show we were watching so we could continue. The two of us made some comments about the dog eating ice and other general small talk. About 10 minutes went by while we watched TV together, and all of a sudden I heard the distinct sound of an in-and-out dog's bark coming from outside. Husband and I look at each other with confusion, and I get up to check. Sure enough, he's back outside? The door was closed, no one else lived with us, and neither of us left the couch between the time I let him in and the time we heard him barking. We're both still baffled about how exactly he pulled off glitching his way outside like that, but hey, maybe he can start doing it more often and save me the trouble of going to the door so often. Case file number 1452, written by Ryan, The Baseball Enigma. Never thought I would share this, but about 10 years ago, I went to a local minor league baseball game when I was about just 16. I still go to the games to this day, but something pretty weird happened with this game. I was at the pool pavilion for this game, and I spent a good amount of time in said pool. It was a bit later in the game, and there were hardly anyone else in the pool by that point. The home team hit a home run over the pool, and I believe it bounced off the roof. I didn't catch the ball or anything. I was excited to think it would probably show up in the highlight reels online. So here's the weird part. I get back home and grab my laptop and search for recent highlight videos from the team website, and I watch the highlights from that day. Lo and behold, I did show up in the video, as it showed the home run going over the pool pavilion. What struck me was when the commentator randomly exclaimed my name. At first I was like, okay, well, it has to be a coincidence. Surely, the name of the batter who just hit that home run had to have the same name. Nope. His name was not even close to it, nor anything that sounded even remotely similar. In fact, no one on the team had the same name as me. I replayed it about 5 more times to make sure I wasn't crazy, and he randomly exclaimed my name when I showed up in the video by myself in this pool. I couldn't think of any other reason why in the world he would be saying that. We do not know anyone who works with the team or know the commentators that were at this game, so I decided to show it to my parents. I didn't tell them about that part because I wanted to see their reaction. So I go into our kitchen and tell them about how I appeared in the highlights, so we sat at the table and watched it. As soon as that part of the video played, and the commentator randomly exclaimed my name when it appeared, I noticed my parents look at each other confused like, what did he just say? They never said anything, but were a lot quieter now, and I could tell they were just as dumbfounded as I was, still having no clue what that was all about. Bonus file, written by Wasteland Mutt, when the night takes a dark turn. Recently, I got a dog. Despite working long hours and having 2 children at home, I tried to do a 1-hour walk with the dog every evening. This is often after 8 p.m., so with it being winter now, it is already dark when I leave. I live in a rural village with some walking trails that run alongside a stream and between agricultural fields. During my walk this night, my dog was suddenly startled by something. She's a hunting dog, so I'm used to her following her nose and running around me. That's why I have such a self-retreating leash. But suddenly, the dog starts running away until the leash is pulled to the maximum. However, she continues to pull after some corrections I gave. I don't pay special attention to the environment around me when I walk, I just look at the path and listen to some music. But I felt something was wrong. As I turned my gaze towards the field, I saw in the moonlight something in the distance walking on 4 legs, which at first sight looked like a deer to me. But when I got about 50 meters from me, it suddenly stopped and just stood straight on 2 legs and looked at me. Reaching about my height, 1.8 meters, suddenly I was cramped with fear. It felt like it could smell my fear and that of the dog, but the silhouette of its head did face me, as the dog stood some 5 meters from me, still floundering with its collar. Not really knowing what to do, I just stared back at it. Where I live, there isn't really a lot of wildlife that I know of. I only know of deers that live there, and I've only encountered a fox, hedgehog, and a hare before. But the dog was more intrigued by these encounters and didn't run away then. She wasn't afraid of cows or horses in the meadow either, but this was something else. She really wanted to get away from this. After a minute or two, I tried to take my torchlight and face it towards it, but it didn't provide enough light to see what it was, and just made everything darker around me when I got my eyes used to it. Another 3 minutes passed, just looking at the vaguely thing in the distance that still stood straight up, until suddenly a car showed up in the distance on a nearby road. The thing hopped back on 4 legs and ran off. Regaining my courage after some time, I still had to walk 20 minutes home. It was the worst feeling of my life. I don't know if I'm gonna walk my dog again, especially not that route. What really makes me uncomfortable, I recently dreamt that something attacked my dog, and when it wanted to face me, I woke up totally in sweat and started hyperventilating. I really hope it was just a deer or something, but I don't know if a deer can stand straight up for about 5 minutes. Recently, a wolf was spotted, which is very unusual in our region, but apparently it just passed here during its migration to a more forested area. There is also an animal shelter about 20 kilometers away that has some confiscated circus bears, but I don't think that was a bear. Case also file 1409, my wild time-bending loop in boarding school. Having to redo a school day twice over, even with the added pizzazz of a mysterious time loop, would indeed be very frustrating. I never did like school. I think it really happened though. I don't think it was just a dream. Indeed, even in lucid dreaming, time processes at a different rate. You wouldn't have every single detail mapped out in your memory. Whereas in this case, you really did live it, and those memories were fresh. So my guess is it was just a temporal portal. That's hard to say. Case on file 1410. The day my name echoed from unseen lips. For some reason, this is reminding me of the Death Note, the anime, where the Shinigami eyes enable one to bear witness to a person's full name and their time of death too. What an incredible ability that would be. And you know, a lot of fiction is based on real events, maybe exaggerated, so maybe there is an actual ability to see people's names, but maybe the exaggeration is seeing their deaths, and obviously, having a book where you can just write their name in and kill them, I don't think that's real. But that information is not as safeguarded as most people think. Even if it's in your mind, it can be accessed. That's just my gut speaking though. Case notes for the bonus file, my father's last call. But the answer is clear to me. Because your dog, he heard it too. Crystal clear as you said. There's no denying your father's final presence, your final message. Still looking out for his daughter. Beautiful. If I have kids and I die prematurely, it would be the same thing for me. You don't want to leave them. If anything would bind you to the planet, it would be that. Now time for the quote of the day. In those days, spirits were brave. The stakes were high. Men were real men. Women were real women. And small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri were small furry creatures from Alpha Centauri. Douglas Adams. This quote is just meant to say that reality was reality and everyone embraced it and tried. Instead of these days, I think people are trying to fight against it, where you're assigned a role at birth, your genetics play a large part in your life, and there is some frustration in that. We don't get to pick our stats, how we look, our height, stuff like that. We just have to roll with what we're dealt, the hand we're dealt. And some people aren't dealt the best hand, which is unfortunate and unfair, but it's still reality. And I think fighting against reality doesn't lead to anywhere good or positive, especially as a collective society. Embracing the natural is probably a good idea. Case notes file 1411. The incredible dragon sighting at school. The commonality in the first few events is seeing white. White is reflecting all color, almost all light, and silver being very similar. So it's reflecting all that information back to you. I think your subconscious was at play in these events, trying to indicate to you a connection or maybe even being stalked by some entity. On wings, probably not, but imperceptible to most people. So your mind was just trying to process what it knew was there, but didn't have direct stimuli for. And maybe your subconscious was trying to get you to look more closely. But this is definitely a jumble of events that is not entirely discernible with what we have. Case notes for the bonus file. When the other side knocks at your door. I would be the same way. If I was in her shoes, murdered by someone I love, the repeating echo loop I would experience as a spirit would be desperately to try to reveal that information to whoever I could. Nothing else would matter. Not even vengeance exactly. It's more of a cosmic justice. You want that person to be outed as for what they did to you. I think that's the most important thing. When there's an injustice done to you, to seek retribution against the person that did it to you can be satisfying, but I think more than anything else, you just want to be known, to be believed, for the world to know what actually happened, for the world to know the truth. That would be a desperate urge indeed. And now time for the quote of the day. Ultimately, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes as failure, but the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. J.K. Rowling. Yes, that's very true. The world wants to define what success is, and these days if you go on social media, you'll find that the measure of success has inflated as much as the currency itself. Now, if you're just an average person making $50K working a blue-collar job, you're nothing. You should be ashamed of yourself in the minds of a lot of people online. And I just find that absolutely insane. These people are, the blue-collar workers are what make the world go round. They fix your toilet, they build your house, they do everything you need done that is real and material in the world. And people don't respect them anymore because they don't make as much as influencers online. And it's funny, speaking as an influencer, I run a YouTube channel and all that, but I don't feel disconnected from my past. I was cleaning offices for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's an important service. Maybe when they automate it, when they have robots that do everything, okay. But in that case, it'll be a different world entirely. Until then, we still need hundreds of millions of people that do actual work with their hands. And we should celebrate that. What is your definition of success? Is it material, monetary, career-wise, or maybe how many close friends and how close you are with family that define success? Everyone has a different standard, and none of them are right or wrong. They just have to be true to you. Question file 1412. The cosmic dance that stopped time. So an asteroid caught in a time portal up in the sky? That sounds so damn cool. Just trying to imagine it, let alone experiencing it yourself. But it does happen fairly commonly, with planes especially. People will just literally see a plane hovering in the air, completely frozen. And yeah, I get that depending on air currents up in the sky, you can have slowdown, but it would never be completely still. Like there's no wobbling even in place. There would be wobbling from the differences in temperature and pressure that gives lift to begin with. So the plane could be stuck in one spot, maybe. Even that would be extremely rare, but you would still have some wobble and tilt and everything going on from the wind and lift and all that. Planes definitely get caught in temporal loops, or at least time freezes. And I don't see why even an asteroid couldn't be caught in that too. Doesn't matter how fast you're going initially. If you travel into that pocket where things are distorted, space-time itself isn't the same, well yeah, you're gonna have weird effects like that, just being caught in the sky. Pretty cool, but very weird. Question 1413. The New York Eve Time Warp. So this progressed from anger to extraordinarily creepy in the skip of a beat. Damn. It is likely a time loop, but that wouldn't make it any more comfortable even knowing it. And I have to say, your husband at the time? People aren't always going to agree on what to do, but I think to just go out on your own and do it anyways, no matter what, especially if you're going to make someone feel that bad. You just have to know your partner, I guess. But yeah, it's unfortunate when people can treat each other that terribly. And then seemingly having no empathy over that fact. Doesn't seem right to me. I don't know what happened after. Maybe he apologized. I hope so. Questions for the bonus file. The silent figure that opened my bedroom door. So first, your mom is one hard worker. Actually, my mom was similar. When I was 13 or something, my parents divorced. I lived with my mom, and she was working. Of course, I was homeschooled. So I would be at home all day, just playing games, studying when I could. But she was hard at work, working 2 jobs, and it's tough. She didn't have to commute 3 hours, which is just insane. But still, shout out to all the hardworking moms and dads too. But yes, this would be as disturbing as it gets. Anything invading or creeping around as we sleep, as we're most vulnerable, it will never not be profoundly unsettling to me. Even from a distance, just reading the story, I feel unsafe. What if it's happening to me and I just don't realize the door is opening? Not something you want. Now, it could have just been a human being, a thief, that saw the kid and said, oh, well, maybe I won't steal from this place. I don't know, that seems unlikely, but it is possible. We'll never know, but damn, just creepy. Caissons for the bonus file, the ghostly Jack Russell of 88. What I want to know most is, where did the dog go? Did someone, or rather something, actually steal this dog? Or was the dog even truly materialized? Maybe it was ethereal or ghostly, as you say, and maybe it was barking at something only it could see. Something that hadn't materialized in our plane. Definitely unsettling, and yet not as unsettling as other stories I've read. I'm not sure why, but it seems almost more wholesome. Not exactly threatening. Now time for the quote of the day. Life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. Ane Nin. So the more courageous you are, doesn't mean you have no fear. It just means you're willing to stand and go against that fear. I'm afraid of everything. I still remember the first time going on camera. That was terrifying. But I'm an introvert, so, putting yourself out there is never going to be, well, for some people maybe it's easy, but for other people it's going to be terrifying. And that's the other context, is that one person's horrible challenge is another person's Tuesday. So we're not all afraid of the same things. And it's important to realize that if you're afraid of something, make sure that the fear is justified. Because maybe it's not something that you need to be afraid of, and in fact, going against that fear would be highly beneficial. It's like a room full of doors, and fear keeps the door closed. Just make sure never to lock the door or seal it permanently unless you're sure that it's not of no value at all. You don't necessarily need to get over your fear of heights, for instance. But your fear of spicy foods? Hey, maybe you'll make a good friend that is into spicy foods too. Take it one step at a time, introduce what is scaring you into your life in small pieces, and see, is there any benefit to this? Maybe the world will open up as a result. Caissons to file 1414, the nocturnal ballet in the enchanted forest. So I agree, this is not ATV riders, no. Spiritual orbs, or ball lightning, as it is conventionally known, perhaps. Wandering spirits, or their pure energy not yet manifested, making their way onward would be the best word, I guess. The fragments left behind don't linger forever. If they did, we'd be inundated with spirits every few feet. Think about how many humans have lived throughout all of human history, over 100 billion. If all of them, who are now dead or passed on, lingered behind, well, there would be a spirit literally every inch. You wouldn't be able to move without going through a cold spot. No. Clearly, most spirits move on, or most fragments, and of course this isn't not even talking about quantum immortality, but I think even then, there's fragments left behind, but those fragments don't linger on forever, that's for sure. I think there are ways they can siphon energy, spiritual energy from the living, but usually they don't, and eventually they fade after maybe a few years, a decade or two, something like that. And now time for the quote of the day. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Albert Einstein. Well, it's kind of like Vulcans in Star Trek, where they have extremely high knowledge and intelligence, but they're not particularly creative. They don't have much drive to push the boundaries. So even if you know all the knowledge there is to know, that's only the base layer. You have to know what to do with that knowledge. And if you have no burning spark to take that knowledge and manipulate it and use it to further your ends and the ends of humanity, well, it's not going to do much for you. So yes, imagination coupled with knowledge is the key. Knowledge is almost like the ingredients, and then imagination is the cooking process and how creative you can get in the kitchen. So get to cooking. Case notes for the file 1415. A journey in mystery with 117. Could it be the universe, God, a guardian angel, a bored developer of the simulation, etc., attempting to communicate a simple message to you? I wouldn't rule it out, but what would 117 signify? Out of curiosity, I looked up what the numbers would correspond to in letters on those old school phones, and it appears to be nothing coherent. One usually doesn't represent anything, or it's just like pound symbols, stuff like that, grammatical syntax. So if it does mean something, it may be very specific to your own life, something you never quite processed. It also could just be random letters that are just coincidentally popping up in your life, or you're just noticing them more than if you're not fixed on the number. That does happen to some people. Caisson File 1416. The Walmart Quantum Resonance Chronicles. So I absolutely love the hypothesis involving a specific resonance vibration, even down to quarks, and maybe even more fundamentally, vibrating strings. But string theory is a separate beast I won't go into now. It's, whoa. What I would find so damn epic is if we reach a point where we can measure this resonance precisely, enough to determine if someone just came through a quantum event. Their resonance signature would be different, though I think it would equalize to the natural state of the new universe eventually. That makes sense. People mellow out after these events pretty quickly. A few days, really. It's true though, anything abnormal like this, even with speculation, makes people feel unsteady, and so they're prone to rejecting the very evidence of their own senses, because it's too much to bear. And now time for the quote of the day. I think on-stage nudity is disgusting, shameful, and damaging to all things American. But if I were 22 with a great body, it would be artistic, tasteful, patriotic, and a progressive religious experience. Shelley Winters. I like to think about people who paint nude people. They just go into a room, there's a guy that's in good shape or a girl, and they just paint them, or draw them. There is a beauty to the naked human form. I think it's curious that, and it's not just in religion, but there is a certain level of shame associated with nudity. And I mean, we see that everywhere. There's a difference between nudity and sex. Obviously, depicting sex is it's more intimate. I think it should be more intimate. But nudity itself, I don't think is necessarily disgusting or shameful. It's an interesting spot where we are in society. In fact, sometimes nudity is portrayed as even worse than like gory violence, which is very strange, isn't it? I think it's a bit odd. Caisson 1417. The Birthday Candle Enigma. So I always have a can of Dr. Pepper by my recliner side before going to bed. Very important. Keep those caffeine molecules processing through the body throughout the night. I am hopped up, I suppose. But this does sound so random overall, doesn't it? Why a birthday candle of all possible things? I don't think it's a sleepwalking event, and you didn't mention it being your birthday, so I don't think it was related to a birthday event. If it was your birthday, I would say, yeah, it's more likely maybe someone in your home tried to prank you in that way. But this just seems so random. I mean, it's so random, but it's also so specific in where it appeared. So if it's just a DOP event, that's such a weird coincidence. Caisson 1418. A very soapy mystery. The key detail is you saw the water go through where the car was supposed to be. This is more than quantum perspective, because in my opinion, in that case, the glitch would be reversed. You'd have seen your neighbor washing his car, parked, then look back and there would be no car being washed at all. That you saw the water pass through that same area means that objects aren't loaded as permanent objects and fixtures in the same way that we think they are, like they're loaded evenly for every single person, or rather they don't have to. It directly relates to individual perception. It can be loaded for one person, but not the other. Which is hard to even process, but that is revolutionary. That's the kind of knowledge that I don't even know what to do with that. Whoa. Caissons for the bonus file. Flickering memories. Okay, I don't think there are many evil spirits around, but there are some. And tossing a pup around and then crushing it? Yeah, that's just pure evil. Burn that place and put salt on it just in case. There's no recovery from that. And now time for the quote of the day. Politics is the art of looking for trouble, finding it, whether it exists or not, diagnosing it incorrectly, and applying the wrong remedy. Ernest Benn. Part of the problem with politics is, whatever your employment in government, to justify your own existence, you need to do work. And if your work is, say, regulating something, well, you're always going to regulate something new, even though if it doesn't need it or not. Or if you're a politician, you always have to pass new laws. Where do we need more laws already? Maybe not. So it's the art of finding trouble because it's your job to, no matter if it exists or not. which is a very big problem in my view. Question 1419. Gaming and editing across timelines. It's something I think about all the time. Have I died myself in some timeline and then coalesced with the other copies of me that exist in all the realms? Actually, by the sheer magnitude of copies that must exist because there's so many alternate universes, I think we all have at least a few times. But that sorrow that must be experienced by our loved ones in those universes where we did die, that haven't even the faintest clue about quantum immortality, it's just so sad to dwell on that, isn't it? As far as the transition and fusion process, I think it's similar to in the movie The One with Jet Li. Mine is gaining superhuman speed and strength, that's fictional. I think it's just informational fusion. You don't gain extra abilities, but if one copy dies somewhere, then its life experiences and memories transfer and fuse together with all the other copies of you that exist everywhere else. It's just copy and pasted to all those other universes, and it happens pretty quickly. But sometimes I think if you're conscious at that moment when it happens, things can get jumbled up in your head. Memories you don't actually remember having, now you suddenly remember. Or maybe you misremember a memory, you remember it differently than it was. Maybe that's often why we misremember things in the past. It's not that our brains damage the memories by thinking of them, but that they physically get rewired when a death of ours occurs in a different universe. And then that information is written into our brains physically. So people with really crystal clear long-term memory then are people who rarely die in any universes at all. But people who misremember all the time, they're dying all the time. Kind of a gloomy thought, I suppose. But this is just speculation. Maybe it's not how it works, but it makes some sense if it was the case. Definitely makes you think either way. Questions for the bonus file. When the pillows whisper. If someone knows a detail of your life that is hyper-specific, and that you've never told anyone and no one has ever seen happen, well, it can't possibly be a prank or of the natural world, unless this random fake psychic works for the NSA or something and is observing you through hidden cameras built into the frame of your truck. Something along those lines of improbability. Let's just say the odds of that are low. The truth is, there are a lot of fake psychics, mentalists, and so on out there. It's a lucrative scam, so unscrupulous people do it. But there are real ones too, usually the ones that don't charge money or at least charge very little. But always beware, it's probably more likely that you'll encounter a fake one than a real one, just randomly going about your day. Questions for the bonus file. In the silence of dawn. So when you pass, how do you want others to remember you and to feel in general? There is an unavoidable melancholy that would overcome your passing if you were loved. You can't shake that away as it's part of the human experience. Change is never easy, especially when it's leaving something behind forever, something that you love. But that said, I think we'd all want our loved ones who remain to embrace the life they still have. And of course, this is without contemplating quantum immortality at all. But, it makes me wonder if I did die. Again, outside of quantum immortality, let's just say this is the one universe. Well, I would want my funeral to be a happy place, like serve actually delicious food, for instance. That would be a good step. Play some funny music, something to lighten the mood. I guess it's hard for people to do that, but if it's what the person who died would want, I don't know. Leave it in the will if they check that before the funeral. And now time for the quote of the day. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. Isaac Newton. And boy, this is a statement from probably the smartest human being to have ever lived. The dude literally invented a new form of mathematics on a dare over summer. That's insane. Most people struggle to even understand the math that's already been established and invented or discovered, however you want to frame it. Imagine just coming up with it on your own, just like that. That should be impossible, basically, but no. Some people were that smart, it's unprocessable. But when someone even that smart understands, and often this is the case, there's a Dunning-Kruger effect where if you're not that smart, you tend to think that you know a lot more than you do, or that you're more competent than you are. But the more smart you are, the more you realize, I know basically nothing at all. The smartest person to have ever lived is still ignorant of like 99.999 to 20 digits % of all the knowledge that there is and could be. And that's not even counting the knowledge we don't even know exists yet. So yeah, if you ever feel dumb, don't worry. We're all basically dumb relative to the abundance of what is out there. Still try to gain more knowledge. It's very useful. It benefits ourselves and other people too. So thirst for knowledge. Just understand that, really, You can't know it all, and that's okay. Case notes of file 1420. Whispers of the Owl. Absolutely. Spirits can possess objects and animate them, and I think most animals have spirits too. But this is still incredibly odd to me because turning the head like that and back should damage the preserved owl. Even if it was absorbed by some spiritual energy, it doesn't mean a rigid object can be deformed against the laws of physics and not break or be damaged. Maybe it was a spiritual interfacing event instead, so the owl's spirit jacked into your mind to make you see something that never happened in reality. Because again, I still think, even if an object is possessed, it can't do things that the laws of physics would prevent. If it breaches its tensile strength or something, it'll just rip apart along those lines. Case notes of file 1421. The Fireball, the Forest, and the Silent Strangers. The first story almost sounds like a lucid dreamlike state, with some sensory perception missing, like sound or simple cues like asking why half the people you knew were walking around the forest alone at midnight. It is very odd and unsettling, but my guess is it wasn't actually happening. The fireball or the meteor maybe did pass, and you were just dreaming it, pulling that information into your mind, and as you were sleeping, your subconscious was processing it, which is kind of cool in a way, I think. Case notes for the bonus file. The Swimming Pool Prophecy. Yes, repeating patterns, echoes. It's funny how our fiction and games often recreate certain elements of reality, accidentally. I'm thinking of in Dark Souls, the video game, where there are pools of blood near the point where someone dies, and if you click on it, it presents the faded recreation of how that player died. Of course, it's not accessible to most people. We don't walk around with bloodstains where people died and we can just press it and then see how they died, no. But some people do possess the ability to pull into that spiritual knowledge bank without them knowing why or how it activates, and then they recreate the whole, and sight, smells, sounds, everything, event in their mind, and they see exactly what happened. It's not just some echo for them. It's really happening. They're there. It's more like in Harry Potter with the pensieve, diving into a memory and really being there, even though you can't affect anything. I think that's pretty cool, but if you don't know or understand what's happening, it would be very disturbing. And now time for the quote of the day. Hard work spotlights the character of people. Some turn up their sleeves, some turn up their noses, and some don't turn up at all. Sam Ewing. I've been hearing about this lately, where, especially in blue-collar work, like physical, manual, hard labor, a lot of people just aren't showing up for work anymore. It makes you wonder. Obviously there's pay issues, it's hard work, you want to be paid really well. And you think about it, if you can manage to work in some other capacity at a desk on a computer, it's much more comfortable, there's no denying that. Although some people do enjoy working with their hands, it feels more direct, I suppose. But yeah, a lot of people just aren't showing up anymore. And I think that's, if you don't want to work, just don't work. But don't make an agreement to show up and then just not show up. That's kind of crappy, Honor your word. That'd be the advice I'd give to people. Simple as that. Just, if you make an agreement, honor it. Or do everything you possibly can to honor it. Obviously, if you get, ejected from a plane or something, you can't go there. But within reason, honor your word. That's all. Case notes of file 1422. The White Beasts on Loxahatchee Road. So there are innumerable beasts out there that we haven't discovered yet, but I believe it's multiverse related. We'll often see beasts, creatures that don't exist in our universe, but for a flash in our perception. Through the looking glass, you'll never know what you find. And the curious thing is, the looking glass is everywhere, but only at specific times. Case notes for file 1423. Diabolical Doodles. The notebook, I think, is embedded with a spirit. Nothing else could have pulled that bloodied shirt to you, and there'd be no reason to do so unless the intent was to freak you out, terrorize you. Mission accomplished. And also, your uncle was a proper prankster. Indeed, the whole point is the payoff. The reaction and the realization that you're the one that created that momentary burst of adrenaline and confusion in their life. It's just fun. Without that payoff, there's no point to the prank. And now time for the quote of the day. After 12 years of therapy, my psychiatrist said something that brought tears to my eyes. He said, "No hablo English." Ronnie shakes. Yes, I think if you're going to a therapist and you discover after 12 years that they don't speak your language, there's a problem there. I think though the joke is that therapists often just listen, which can be very good and therapeutic in of itself, in just talking to someone. Of course, I think they do more than that, but I've never been to therapy myself, so I think it probably has a lot of use, but it just depends on what you're looking to gain from it. You have to know why you want to go, I think is the core point of it. Question suivant 1424. The quarter that slipped into another dimension. What you referred to is the physical process called quantum tunneling. It's how fusion works in the hot plasma of the sun. In effect, atoms don't exist as precise points in space, but rather as clouds of probability. If you apply enough heat and pressure in a given area, then the odds that the probability waves of atoms will overlap increases. However, this should almost never happen outside of very hot and pressurized environments. It's the whole conundrum with trying to get fusion to work here on Earth. We just don't have enough pressure. We can get a lot of heat though, and that's the only way we can do it. So it's more likely it's a classic DOP event for this coin. The coin didn't phase through the floor, no. It just ported into a different universe, which I think is even more incredible. Questions for the bonus file. The mystery of the flying paint cans. So I've been thinking lately that I think the world as a spirit sees it is likely different or blurry than as we perceive it. Faded out. So those paint cans may not even be what they are to us, in their perspective. Also, there's a certain energy you can feel when you're around, I guess you could say evil, or maybe rather unsettled or unstable spirits, or even human beings. You can feel the aura that emanates from them when you're around them, and you know to get out. You don't test the waters in some circumstances, but we do innately know it. Questions for the bonus file. The Shed of Shadows. Okay, this is interesting because something relatively similar happened to me when I was a teenager. I was home alone, my mom was out working, and it was maybe 7 p.m., but it was already dark outside. The door from outside to inside was really close to the living room area, like a few feet. I could see it from the couch. I was watching a show, and I heard a massive crash or bang on the door. I felt it vibrate the air. Immediately went to look at the peephole, but I saw nothing. I hadn't thought of this in over a decade until now. It's very interesting. It's a phantom noise with no source. Now time for the quote of the day. In 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. Robert Frost. Life sure does go on, and it always finds a way. The good thing about that, of course, is that we persist. And even though if we might die or get transposed to a different universe, whatever it may be, I think the essence of who we are remains. Even after that final death, life goes on because it's a repeating pattern, and maybe even encoded deliberately from a simulation. It's interesting to ponder on what comes after life, but maybe that's not even the right move. Maybe it's just about enjoying the life we do know we have right now. So I'll keep pondering on the future and what lies beyond everything, but make sure you enjoy the gift that you have now, because for certain you do have it. Case notes for file 1425, the Santa Claus Guardian. Ah yes, the classic guardian angel event. Although I will say, some real human beings do this kind of random charity work directly on the street. I can say if I ever got rich one day, myself, that's what I'd enjoy doing. You see a lot of it now with the Mr. Beast types, and I think that's great, but it's kind of a business, you know what I mean? Sometimes being entirely anonymous, there's an appeal in that too. I might do a mix of both if I ever make it to that level of wealth. But I've been in a similar position before, so broke I could barely get home after work. I remember working in downtown Montreal, in a little apartment building at night as the doorman, but working inside at the desk. It's a fine job, but getting home I had to take the subway and bus. I remember one time I didn't have enough money for that, and this was in winter. Walking home would take hours, but I did it anyway. I had no choice. I don't remember ever being more tired than that morning when I finally got home. Achy feet and freezing. Ugh. Those kind of stories, those kind of events in a person's life, they do build character. They aren't for nothing. Question suivant 1426, an engineer's journey. So by spiritually black and dead, I think it's more meant as disconnected from these unseen realms and dimensions that most would describe as spiritual realms. Whatever you want to call it, it's areas that we cannot directly test with any instrument, so it's hard to definitively quantify. But if we were able to subconsciously pick up information from this realm, to shut yourself off of it is indeed a huge handicap. You'd be spiritually cut off, dead, I guess. And when it comes down to it, maybe we can even invite entities from that realm over here. But I would advise caution in doing so, because you never know who will come over. Even though I think the odds are high that it would be a good entity, there's no guarantees, so be careful. Case notes for the bonus file. The perfectly spooked Bobby. The loudness level of these rogue sound events is what has me befuddled. Something is amplifying it beyond a natural state. So it's more than just sound from another universe, it's more like a small burst from multiple alternate universes combined at the same time. It's very weird. And now time for the quote of the day. It is our responsibilities, not ourselves, that we should take seriously. Peter Ustinov. And I would add to this, or amend it slightly, it's the responsibilities that we personally choose to undertake. Sometimes there's responsibilities that are thrust on you, but I don't think those are valid. I think sometimes in those cases you should still handle them with grace, but they aren't what define you. They aren't what build your character. It's the burdens that we bear ourselves, that we put on our back, or the weights we put on our own back, those are what actually matter, and those are what we should take seriously. It really harkens back to just honoring your word. If you agree to do something, whatever burden it might be, if you take the responsibility seriously, people will take you seriously. That's how it works. Case notes of file 1427. Vosh's cryptic adventure that will leave your mind blown. Indeed, mind blown. There's something about our pets, dogs and cats especially, that enable transient phases. That is to say, when they aren't directly observed, they aren't necessarily where they should be. It's literally Schrodinger's cat at large. I do think some pets have souls. Some dogs, cats, cows, all that stuff. But maybe some of them are placeholders. Maybe they're NPCs, so to speak, and those can be phased in and out with no issue. Maybe as even a function of how the simulation works. That is a way to frame it, I think. That would make some sense. Case notes for file 1428. The prophetic toddler. We all know about future knowledge drifting out of the ether, but how it comes into our minds is not clear at all. Is it always being picked up like a signal from in a radio? But the decoding process isn't always easy or simple for the subconscious? I think younger minds seem more prone to accessing it or decoding it. Maybe it's because our subconscious doesn't automatically filter it out, and sometimes even adults are able to tap into it. Case notes for the bonus file. My spine-chilling encounter in Jack the Ripper's Square. Ah yes, Jack the Ripper, famous lore indeed. The most chilling aspect about Jack the Ripper is he was never caught. No legitimate suspects. A figurative ghost that produced literal ghosts, one of which you almost certainly saw that day. How somber is that? And yet, I don't think she posed any threat to you at all. More of a longing. From her perspective, she probably is seeing London as it was over a century ago. And that's another thing I was thinking. If the perspective of spirits can be shifted, maybe it's even in time. Maybe their echo, their repeating pattern, they see things normally. And now time for the quote of the day. Sometimes, when we are generous in small, barely detectable ways, it can change someone else's life forever. Margaret Cho. Yes, the devil is in the details, but so is the angel. Those small little acts that maybe a friend mentioned something that they really wanted for Christmas, and instead of getting them a generic gift card or something, maybe you just remember that one thing. And that means more than $1,000 to them. Well, unless they're, struggling beyond belief, but in general, people appreciate when you remember very specific things about them, and then you act on those small things. Or it doesn't have to be something that you remember about them, but maybe just making them a meal. Maybe they're sick and you come over with soup. Those small acts, they go so far, and they amplify on themselves. The more small acts you do for someone, the more each subsequent one is valued. And it's not a conscious thing, it's just how it seems to work. But of course, it's not like in a video game where you have reputation standing with an NPC and you just give them gifts to keep increasing it. It's not, you shouldn't think of it that way, but in effect it kind of does work similar to that, which is kind of cool. Case notes for file 1429. An entire town vanished after midnight. Oh, I love this glitch. But it's damn sad for those cheerleaders. I wonder what actually happened to them. There's no question the town vanished, since it's literally one straight stretch of road. It's impossible to get turned around or lost if you just traveled back and forth on it. A ghost town from a century ago. But that's beyond any stories I've read. Ghosts are barely capable of manifesting in our realm at all, let alone an entire physical town, complete with real food that you bought and ate. No way. It had to be from another universe, but then how was the lady at the counter aware that the town would slip away for you? And why exactly after 1? There's some clue here that isn't making sense, because the lady knowing that the town would vanish, that is completely different, because most people in these multiverse events, they have no clue anything's going on, besides like oddities that don't quite add up, but even then, often people don't even notice those. It almost sounds like an experiment. Question to file 1430. The silence that speaks volumes. Honestly, that's just a beautiful sentiment. Even nature itself pausing to give respect to the couple that died there. I don't know if that's the cause or if it was some multiverse transition point and you were caught in limbo, so all the sound just mutes out. But I'd rather go with the first one. Nothing wrong with a bit of heartwarming faith. Question for the bonus file. The unexplained flickering in Illyria's historic home. Honestly, it's just safer to assume that weird oddities like this are from a haunting. It's entirely plausible that the old wiring in that house was responsible for the delayed activation and flickering, but risk-taking when there's no reward, well, there's no purpose in that. Why risk it? Just don't go back down there. As far as sneaking downstairs to get a can of corn, boy did we have different tastes as kids. I'd sneak downstairs to get cookies, literally in the cliché way on top of the fridge. My mom actually thought that would stop me. I was a little monkey, so adorable. Now time for the poem of the day. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. Mary Elizabeth Fry. I just thought this was beautiful when I came across it the other day, and I wanted to include it here. I am not there. I did not die. That can be taken in many ways, but I think if you're religious or even just believe in a simulation or anything like that, that life persists after death, that the person, the soul that was there, is no longer there, but is still alive and functioning. I just find that beautiful. And this is a great way to say it. Do not mourn the dead, because they're not really dead in the way most people think. And there's a juxtaposition there where a lot of people are religious, but they still mourn the dead, even though they believe, or at least they say they believe, that they're in a better place. So it really is a personal thing. The mourning is for yourself, for the adventures you can no longer have with that person, for the jokes and humor and banter and fine dining that you can't enjoy anymore with them. There is sorrow in that, but I think it's very comforting to know that for them, they'll have their own adventures of a different sort. Adventures we can't even fathom. Until it's our turn. Question to file 1431. The mysterious midnight melee in small town USA. So if not for the 2 a.m. detail, I'd say this was certainly just a kind of LARPing event. I actually went to one when I was a teen. My mom brought me there. Just a bunch of teenagers and some adults play fighting with makeshift MacGyvered weapons. There was a surprising amount of rules involved in terms of scoring and death and so on, where you could hit. It was every boy's dream day, pretty much. But at 2 a.m.? In such a small town? Pre-internet too, so organizing something like this doesn't seem feasible. And it wasn't a prank, as you specify. The location doesn't add up for that, because they could wait the whole night and maybe not a single car would come by. Maybe it was a normal LARPing event, but seen through time. And from the group's perspective, they were seeing this odd car pull up with its headlights on in broad daylight, wondering what they were up to. Both sides seeing something odd, not quite fitting given the parameters of time and place. Case notes for the bonus file. The mysterious woman who rescued my diabetic mom. So your brother did go outside for help. I could believe that this strange woman heard your brother's cries, but from far away, and came as fast as she could, but it still took some time. But how she knew your names? Maybe it was your mother's guardian angel. A normal stranger human wouldn't know the names of these kids there and the mother too. And this would make sense. A guardian angel oversees all of her life, and of course she'd be aware of her children's names. And she'd call for the ambulance that both of you in a young panic didn't. Which, I don't blame you. I probably wouldn't have known what to do or been capable of emotionally handling it at the time at such a young age. Even as an adult, it would be stressful. And now time for the quote of the day. Mistakes are part of the dues one pays for a full life. Sophia Loren. Very true indeed. And I'm curious, what is all of yours biggest mistakes, or would you say is your biggest mistake in life that you're willing to share? I think my biggest mistake was being homeless when I was young, just a teenager. For various reasons, it wasn't absolutely necessary to happen that way, but where my mind was, it kind of led to that. Now, funnily enough, being homeless developed my character a lot, so I don't even know if it's a mistake, but I do wonder where my life would be now had I not done that. I guess that's the other problem with mistakes, right? How do you know it was actually a mistake in the grand scope of your life? It's really hard to say. Case also file 1432. A dark figure vanished 2 meters behind me. I've always contended that cemeteries would be places of peaceful rest. Even if there are lingering spirits behind, they wouldn't be full of anger and despair. Maybe loneliness would be the worst emotion present in most cases. But is this all there is here? A lonely spirit trying to manifest to the only living soul in the area? I could see it, but it seems like a very manifested person, more than a ghost would normally be. Case notes for the bonus file. The ring, the whiskey, and the emotional night I'll never forget. This story really hit hard. Wow. Sorry for your loss. To be on your deathbed and asleep for the bulk of it, on a somber level, there is comfort in that. Morphine too, of course. Hopefully he wasn't in much pain. All you can wish for in a scenario like this is the ability to tell those you love exactly that you love them. And giving you the ring too. There's no doubt there's a subconscious link involved here, where his own brain knew it's time to muster up every last drop of energy we have for our final gesture of love to our son, to be able to say those words that we knew were implied, but we had never said before, that I love you. And now time for the poem of the day. In the burned house, I am eating breakfast. You understand, there is no house, there is no breakfast. Yet here I am. The spoon which was melted scrapes against the bowl which was melted also. No one else is around. Where have they gone to, brother and sister? Mother and father? Off along the shore, perhaps. Their clothes are still on the hangers. Their dishes piled beside the sink, which is beside the wood stove, with its grate and sooty kettle. Every detail clear, tin cup and rippled mirror. The day is bright and songless. The lake is blue, the forest watchful. In the east a bank of clouds rises up silently like dark bread. I can see the swirls in the oilcloth. I can see the flaws in the glass, those flares where the sun hits them. I can't see my own arms and legs, or know if this is a trap or a blessing. Finding myself back here, where everything in this house has long been over. Kettle and mirror, spoon and bowl, including the body I had then, including the body I have now, as I sit at this morning table, alone and happy. Bare child's feet on the scorched floorboards, I can almost see. In my burning clothes, the thin green shorts, and grubby yellow t-shirt, holding my cindery non-existent radiant flesh, incandescent. Margaret Atwood. It's a beautiful story of passing, and I think how the world goes on even though we eventually fade, or always have at this point. A simple thank you to all the poets out there that help define and ease tragedies. Case notes for file 1433. The Christmas Time Warp. The cell phone is the key piece of information. You went back to the same site that you had checked before, but the number was different. This means you did check the same place in both universes. In your original, you really did call and make a reservation, but in the second, when you placed the order, the phone number registering in your phone was different than the original universe, not the same number. A pretty significant difference. It's clear as day proof it's a different universe. The number you did call in the new universe belongs to a different restaurant entirely. But I think the time lag is from jumping to a universe that was far away from the original. Some transfers are nearly instantaneous, but not all. The further the distance, the greater the time required to copy over the data. That's my hypothesis anyways. Case notes of file 1434. Data lost in time. A multiverse night indeed. The data is from you partying in an adjacent universe. That's how you could have lost it there. Then the universe itself lost it DOP style, and it was moved over to this universe where your boyfriend miraculously finds it for you. But even if this is the case, it's a glitch that depends on a massive coincidence too. So it's just quite spectacular. And now time for the quote of the day. Be peaceful, be courteous, obey the law, respect everyone. But if someone puts his hand on you, send him to the cemetery. Malcolm X. This actually reminds me of a video I just watched from Veritaserum and revolving game theory and how it applies differently when there's multiple instances of iteration. So it's not just one interaction from one person and then you never see each other again. But basically, they test various strategies in interacting with other people multiple times, and the by far winning move, the winning strategy, is always tit for tat, which simply means you operate in good faith with someone else, and if they operate in good faith with you, you keep doing so. Until, if they transgress against you, then you retaliate. But only once, only within reasonable approach. And then after that, if they go back to normal, then you go back to normal as well. So tit for tat. Sort of like an eye for an eye, but I guess maybe less extreme. Apparently, this leads to the most optimal, total best results long term for everyone involved. Be very good in general, but also be strong and be willing to defend yourself and put your foot in the ground if you are betrayed or attacked or in some way wronged. You can't let that slide, but you can forgive in time if they take obvious measures to never repeat it again. Respond, but forgive. Yeah, that's a good summary. Case notes of file 1435. Our 20-mile leap in just 10 minutes. So there is, of course, highway hypnosis, driving on autopilot. But that shouldn't happen with two people in the car talking to each other. And even then, the time factor proves it is a glitch, or to me, a normal phenomenon of space-time portals. I'm not convinced these are just aberrations of the universe, though. They're too precise for that. No one gets ported into the planet itself or under the water or in space or anything. It's always on the surface, a very thin crust from the planet, so the odds of that are actually very low, if it was entirely random. So given that it's not random, maybe it's placed by aliens or by our own government conducting some sort of technology experiment. I'm actually not sure which is more terrifying. Case notes of file 1436. A frosty mystery. Brilliant. A frosty heaven. Damn, I miss the cold. It's been so hot here in North Carolina, even into January. The damn El Nino event is keeping us toasty. And also somewhat rainy. Maybe next year, when I'm up in New Hampshire, I'll get my white Christmas again. You don't realize how much you'll miss something until you don't have it. It's only been a bit over 2.5 years since I left Canada. Anywho, this is a classic DOP indeed, or just a really cold ghost. Probably a DOP. Case notes for the creepy file. The unexplained disappearance of my best boy, Voyou. Dementia, the natural glitch of the mind. It's horrible to see it happening to someone else, but what I want to know is, how does it feel when it's happening to you? It's not directly painful, like being punched. It's more like reality would start to fade away and distort. Like those horror shows where the whole world appears to have gone mad. You're the only sane one, but you don't realize it's actually the opposite. That is truly stuff of nightmares, like nightmare fuel, as far as you can go. If you cannot trust your own mind, your own self, you're completely lost, and that is just truly sends shivers down my spine. And now time for the poem of the day. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. Hafiz. It sure does light the sky brilliant, doesn't it? When you give love and you don't expect anything in return. It's simply your being. And this doesn't apply just in relationships, it's just the nature of people who are giving and open and very positive. They shine, and that radiates out to everyone else around them. Everyone within distance of their rays. If you're doing it without expecting anything in return, it truly is genuine. Being around people like that is enchanting. Case notes of file 1437. Billie Eilish hijacked our minds. Well, there are conspiracy theories around Billie Eilish, how she's a demon in hiding or something along those lines. I won't go into that, but mind connections between loved ones and very close friends are common. They're like information superhighways, just with Wi-Fi, or like satellites in the sky. You don't see the information transfer, but it's very real. Case notes of file 1438. The supernatural sapphire. If I had to guess about objects being infused with spiritual energy, it'd be objects that people value tremendously, emotionally. I think sapphires and other precious gems too would fall into that category quite often. Who knows who owned the sapphire prior? Maybe it was reclaimed by the lost soul it once belonged to. Or it's just a classic DOP, which maybe is more likely, but it's fun to entertain other possibilities. Caisson to file 1439, Seconds from Disaster. It's hard to say if this was quantum immortality or a guardian angel event. It could easily be either. Although quantum immortality is more common, it's so common, it's the Occam razor's choice if you ask me. But I won't discount a guardian angel, especially since you saw this strange man just lingering and you were like almost in frozen time and you saw it. That does lead me more to guardian angel event. Caissons for the bonus file, The Nightmare on My Street. Yeah, unknown beast lurking in the shadows, a nightmare indeed. It's impossible to say what it was you saw. The only advice that should be heeded is exercising caution when surrounded by the unknown. And now time for the poem of the day. In twilight's gentle, whispered hush, where shadows dance and silence blush, a riddle whispers through the air, a secret tale beyond compare. Moonbeams weave a mystic lore, in silver threads they softly soar. The night unfolds its veiled decree, a cosmic code known just to me. Star shimmer, ancient glyphs unfold, a universe of stories untold. Eclipsed within the midnight sigh, a dash of mystery in the sky. Embrace the enigma, dark and deep. In every second, promises seep, clear to understand yet veiled in rhyme, an eternal echo, lost in time. It's something that speaks to me, and I think all of us, because we're here because we question the nature of the universe itself, or even not necessarily question it, but just want to know all about it, to delve into the mysteries of it, the ancient glyphs that are unfolding, though slowly. And really, we have to unfold them ourselves. But that's part of the fun of life. Caisson to file 1440. A clean-shaven hero appears in the trailer park swamp. So I was never attacked by fire ants, though I did anger a nest of bees when I was growing up, since I always climbed trees. Maybe anger is the wrong word, though. I got the attention of a few of the castle's defenders, let's just say that, yeah. Not the whole nest. I was thinking maybe this was a homeless man, but squatting in the unoccupied trailers. But by your description of him, that's less likely, because he's homeless, trying to better himself by squatting in a trailer with no running water? Doesn't sound like a recipe for a clean-shaven man, does it? So guardian angel, perhaps? But it's very strange nevertheless. There's no reason I can think of for why a clean-shaven, well-dressed man would be hiding in a trailer park. Caisson to file 1441. The dream as real as life. This calls for a bonus quote of the day. Morpheus, what is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. You tell him, Morpheus. It's true. What we interpret as real is a complex series of signals firing in our brain. We don't understand the specifics of how that translates to produce sentience, but maybe a soul is involved in that, or maybe it's all a simulation. But that's not really a deep answer anymore, and in fact it just pushes the question further back. Because then you ask, well, in the real world, what if that is also a simulation, ad infinitum? There has to eventually be a stopping point where it is the real universe, and is that real universe created by a god, or is it just eternal and always existed? It's completely unknowable, but very interesting to think on. Caissons for the bonus file. Dreaming of a grandfather I never knew existed. There are tons of stories like this, from young children who never encountered their grandparents or their relatives. One was even about his mom's deceased friend, but they somehow gleaned that knowledge, like plucked from the ripened tree. Religious parallels there, but not consciously. So less plucked. It's more like Newton, the apple falling from the tree. The knowledge just falls from the tree into his brain, without any conscious thought or will. And now time for the poem of the day. Romance, who loves to nod and sing, with drowsy head and folded wing, among the green leaves as they shake, far down within some shadowy lake. To me, a painted parakeet hath been a most familiar bird, taught me my alphabet to say, to lisp my very earliest word. Willy in the wild wood I did lie, a child with a most knowing eye. Of late eternal condor years, so shake the very heaven on high, with tumult as they thunder by. I have no time for idle cares, through gazing on the unquiet sky, and when an hour with calmer wings it's down upon my spirit flings. That little time with lyre and rhyme, to while away forbidden things. My heart would feel to be a crime, unless it trembled with the strings. Edgar Allan Poe. Through gazing on the unquiet sky. That is my favorite line of this poem. What's yours? Question 1442. The main bridge that connects into the multiverse. Perhaps the bridge, then, was significant not as a literal crossing of the multiverse, more as a signal of the transition occurring. And then in the new universe, you couldn't find the bridge anymore, but in the past, original universe, it did exist, you just never looked for it. That would definitely be a mind-screwy thing, because a bridge is such a hefty difference. But it is such an interesting parallel, because you think of crossing, and you think of a bridge. It's almost like maybe your minds created the image of a bridge, but it never existed. It was simply the transition process from the subconscious to the conscious, being aware of what was happening. Question 1443. The bathroom portal mystery. Your daughter sounds cute, like a young Hermione. DOP style, but for an entire human being. It does happen, even outside of space-time portals. I think people are made up of matter, even if tethered to this realm by a soul. So whatever force is responsible for DOP of inanimate objects can sometimes, very rarely though, affect whole people. Which of course begs the question, where did the lady go? The mind roams into unpleasant territory when pondering that question. Case notes for the bonus file. Christmas shivers. I could see this being a break-in. I've heard it's common for them to happen dressed up as Santa Claus around the holidays. It gives a cover of naturality. You're walking around as Santa Claus, people don't really pay any mind to you, no matter where you are. Now time for the poem of the day. The living come with grassy tread, to read the gravestones on the hill. The graveyard draws the living still, but never any more the dead. The verses in it say and say, the ones who are living come today, to read the stones and go away. Tomorrow the dead will come to stay. So sure of death the marbles rhyme, yet can't help marking all the time. How no one dead will seem to come. What is it men are shrinking from? It would be easy to be clever, and tell the stones, men hate to die, and have stopped dying now forever. I think they would believe the lie. Robert Frost. To eventually join with the very tombstones that they read, and ponder on, and linger on, and the emotions tethered to death, and the way we not glorify, but remember death, incarnated literally into a physical manifestation of a solid stone carved out to depict who was dead. There's beauty and sadness combined, and I guess that is the story of death, isn't it? Passing, making way for other people, but let's see if we can fix that. Everyone who's ever lived has died. Maybe one of us can eventually break the rhyme. Question 1444. Wi-Fi network, ghost.net. Indeed, there are network glitches even with cellular systems and towers. Lots of buffering going on as part of how the system naturally works. But it's impossible for there to be a tech glitch, purely as part of technology, that only sends you repeated messages from friends who had died, and only friends who had died, no one else. That's impossible. That is literally targeted. By the way, your life sounds so tragic. I wonder how it came to be that so many of your friends passed away so early. By how you describe it, we're talking about 3 or more. Very sorry for your losses. Question 1445. My phone played hide and seek with me. Okay, so you absolutely were pranked, but merely by an entity or simulation dungeon master, not a human being. I don't know if any of you have ever played D&D, or even just role-playing games, where effectively the idea is you set up a scenario where people try to navigate through it, and there's obstacles and random events and such, and of course, some dungeon masters are rather mischievous and lead you to places where there's nothing there, or you have to invest a lot and you don't get anything from it. Like a locked door with nothing behind it. Stuff like that. Anyways, the idea of being a dungeon master is very thrilling in its own right, but imagine it was a dungeon master for a game as complex and realistic as life, and people don't even know that it's a simulation or a game. You could have a lot of fun with people trapped in that simulation, trapped in that game. Questions for the bonus file. Ghostly visitor knows secrets and then vanishes. God is an interesting concept to me. If God exists, or rather more likely, how does he exist? Even if we're in a simulation that's just one layer higher, so who's to say where the ultimate end is? And that probably does involve a God of some kind, a creator of some kind, that is more than just a simulation computer process or rendering. That is very interesting to ponder on. But it is really unknowable for me. And that is one concept that I struggle with a lot, where a lot of people will say that you choose not to accept God or something like that. But really, for people like me, it's not a choice of accepting or not accepting, it's simply unknowing. There's a lot, it's like the same things that I ponder on in all these stories that we read. There's very interesting hypotheses and things that I believe pretty strongly in, like DOP is so common and it happens so frequently that I can say with high certainty that it's probably true. But ultimately, I don't know. Maybe it's something else that no one has thought about, or at least I haven't. I prefer to say, I don't know, but still speculate. But ultimately, I really don't know. I think that is the beginning of wisdom, is to be able to say and admit to yourself that you don't know. Now time for the poem of the day. Beneath the silver moonlit sky, where dreams and wishes softly lie, a tale unfolds in whispers sweet, a poetic dance, a rhythmic feat. In meadows bathed in golden light, where shadows dance in gentle night, the flowers bloom, the colors blend, a symphony of nature without end. Through forests deep and oceans wide, where secrets in the waves reside, each leaf that falls, each breeze that sighs, a canvas painted 'neath the skies. On wings of hope, in flight we soar, to realms unknown forevermore. The journey weaves through time and space, a tapestry of love and grace. So let the verses gently flow, like streams that to the rivers go. In poetry, a world unfolds, where tales are told and hearts are held. May this rhyming verse convey a glimpse of magic in your day, for in each word a spark ignites, a symphony of shared delights. Shared delights and connections. I love it. It is just so beautiful, isn't it? Case note for file 1446. Josh peed and Josh vanished. So in cases where kids just seem to vanish off the face of the earth, I think WITSEC is most likely the culprit. No news articles or missing children then. That explains the large picture aspect of this missing. But it isn't holistic. It doesn't connect to the small glitch of how he literally faded away, blocked in by that wall. He couldn't have left in that immediate local area surrounded by all those people, all your friends. So a space-time portal into witness protection? That'd be hard to explain to the authorities, I would say. But it is kind of funny. Imagine that you are in WITSEC, you're guarded, and then one day you just vanish. Or even in prison. What if one day someone escapes prison accidentally through a space-time portal? Would they even admit to it, though? They would rather it be like, no, there was a grand prison break level escape. I was the mastermind. I organized it all, and you'll never figure out how I did it. But really, one day they just woke up out of prison. That would be funny. Case notes, file 1447. The mysterious incident that disappeared from the news. There's another story where someone was on the beach and touched an object, then witnessed a whole battle scene from the past. So is there something that can induce visions of the past, especially when they involve tragedies or death? Like a cursed object, more like an infused object? In this case, viewing an accident and talking to a person who later died, but indeed was witness to the same accident you saw. It was just from the past. If you look back years, you might actually find that exact accident. Although I guess it would be hard to distinguish, I guess just on the road it happened on. But yeah, look in the past, you might find it. Case notes for file, the mysterious moment my boyfriend vanished mid-conversation. It's a pet peeve of mine when people leave mid-conversation or interrupt you. You know what I mean? Take the conversation as seriously as I am, or don't engage at all. Otherwise, it's disrespectful. In this case, it's the universe causing the disrespect, or more apathy, I guess. The good old insulting multiverse switcheroo. But no ill intent intended. And now time for the quote of the day. You can live to be 100 if you give up all the things that make you want to live to be 100. Woody Allen. And even then, it's complicated. People will say that meat is super important. People will say that only plants are important. If you eat meat, you're going to die. If you eat only plants, you're going to die. And that's just your diet. What about exercise, and how do you exercise properly without injuring yourself? And, pesticides and chemicals and all this stuff. Who knows? And, some people, maybe it's just genetics, will eat a terrible diet, smoke every day, drink soda every day, and live to 110. There's this video of a lady that really likes Dr. Pepper, which is, good choice. Very smart lady, let's say. But she was really old. I think she was like 90-something or even 100. And she says that she drinks Dr. Pepper every day of her entire life. The true doctor checking in. Yeah. Try to live as long as you can, but really it's hard to figure out, isn't it? Yeah. One thing I'm sure of, though, walking is extremely healthy for you. So get your steps in. Good place to start. Case notes for file 1449. Flip-flopping ducks twisted our reality. To notice this anomaly together, in unison, with your husband at the same time, is the true gold standard of a glitch. Not just the witness, but we're both noticed simultaneously, so there could be no possibility of being influenced even subconsciously by the other. This shall now be known as the quack standard. Case notes for the bonus file. Glaring yellow eyes beneath the table. As you describe this feeling, the presence, when it left, it was like a spell was lifted, a weight lifted off your shoulder. I have to say, that's one of the most terrifying descriptions I've ever read of an unknown beast or entity. There's fog and the hair standing up on your neck, but no, this is meaty. Spirit, I suppose, or maybe worse, it was demonic. Of course, you get the parallels to yellow eyes in Supernatural. And you never should discount those parallels, because often, reality is stranger than fiction, but they're interconnected in many ways. Case notes for the bonus file. Spectral splashes. What a twist ending. Not how these bonus files usually end, but I think this was fun. It's a very smart cat that fooled us all. And who knows, maybe it was a ghost cat. Probably not. Now time for the quote of the day. Having a dream is what keeps you alive. Overcoming the challenges makes life worth living. Mary Tyler Moore. You really experience this in a microcosm when you're playing a video game. If you reach a point where you've met all the challenges, then sure, you can still play. You can still kill enemies mindlessly. You can still run around the open world. But what's the point? Without dedicated goals and challenges, there is no purpose to life. Now, outside of believing in religion or anything beyond the world that has purpose, if you're just talking about everyday life, if you want it to mean something, then just set a goal. And it could be any goal. It could be walking more, it could be getting into shape, it could be learning a new language, it could be getting better at chess. Any goal you want, life is the ultimate sandbox. So, the toughest thing is not accomplishing goals, it's choosing which goal to set, or to choose a goal at all. And I think that's a lot of where depression comes from, is not being able to quantify goals and then truly build the habits necessary to accomplish them. And then you're stuck in limbo where life has no meaning. It's purely hedonic. It's not enough for the human spirit. Case notes for file 1450. The Mario Galaxy Connection. Soul-based astral projection is well known, but quite rare to project into the past, effectively creating a kind of time loop with yourself through your soul. I wonder if this happens more often than we realize. We just don't notice our soul that is watching us, and of course, we only realize when we eventually get to the future and dream of, or maybe we never do dream of, the incident itself. Also, Mario Galaxy was a good game, but it was never as comparable to the originals. Nothing could ever beat that. Case notes for file 1451. Snowy Canine Teleportation. I wish Mr. Ben would learn this move. He has separation anxiety, so he has to be in my room when I sleep. I hear him all night long licking himself, pacing around my recliner, because I sleep in a recliner. And after about 4 hours of this, of course, he has to go back out already to go pee or chase a bird or something. And of course, I can't leave him outdoors now in these colder temperatures. My sleep quality has been decreased, but hey, it's for Mr. Ben, it's worth it. I love him, but please learn to teleport too, Mr. Ben. All dogs should be equipped with this basic ability, don't you agree? Now time for the poem of the day. In the kitchen's lively dance, pots and pans, a symphony of flavors, a culinary romance, spices waltz, herbs pirouette with grace. In the world of food, a delicious embrace. From crispy bacon sizzle to a donut's sweet delight, each bite tells a story, a gastronomic flight. Tomatoes blushing in the summer sun, a feast for the senses, a banquet begun. Cheese, a maestro in a melody of textures. Crispy crusts, juicy fruits, oh, what textures! Chocolate whispers secrets in a velvety trance, oh, the magic of food, a poetic chance. So let's raise a toast to the art of our plate, a culinary symphony where flavors relate. In the banquet of life, let joy be the theme, for in every bite, a delicious dream. A little quick poem about food, and that is what life is all about to me. If I couldn't taste food, What would be the point? I literally walk now 8 miles a day just so I can eat a ton of food. Maybe I'm slightly crazy? It's possible. Let me know in the comments. Case notes for file 1452, the baseball enigma. You know, one thing I realize I'm really lucky to have is my parents. They're very open about thoughts beyond the normal. If this happened to me and I showed the video to them, there wouldn't be silence. We'd try to dissect what on earth happened with each other. What are the logical possibilities and so on. More on my dad's side there, that I get that from, but my mom is also interested in the supernatural, maybe more esoteric. Less specific causes and reasons why things can happen, but still very interested in it, and believing in it. So could this have been as simple as the commentator randomly picking out a name and it just so happened to be yours? Perhaps. Maybe something guided him to precisely be your name. Something influenced his subconscious. Case notes for the bonus file. When the night takes a dark turn. I don't think that was a bear either. Perhaps it was some exotic animal to the region. But it's best to practice safety when going out on walks alone at night, if at all possible, in your area. Carry protection. We'll never know of all the beasts and more that lurk out there. And who knows if a gun would even work on it, but it's better to be safe than sorry, at least take some precautions. And now time for the joke of the day. Do your socks have holes in them? No. Then how'd you get your feet in them? Yeah, you know, there is one hole on each, the entrance of it. Although I think my socks have a few extra, so, I guess the answer is yes. Not a joke in that case. If you like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.